Morning, everyone.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We're continuing the regular September SLRD board meeting from yesterday. And the meeting, we'd like to recognize that this meeting is being held on the traditional territory of the Lillooet Nation. I'm beaming in from Northern Statliam territory, Cookstem Calip, and in the Northern Statliam, we've had a recent loss. One of the 4 firefighters that was killed in that crash was Kenneth Patrick, a young man from the Hacklet community. So want to express our sadness about that event and express our sympathies to the friends and family of Kenneth. He was a lovely young man. And with that, we will resume our agenda. We were up to item 8.7, which is information report on the Northern Statliam Relations C2C Forums update. Welcome, Jeanette. Please go ahead and introduce yourself and do the report. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jeanette Naden. I'm the Community and Indigenous Relations Advisor for the SLRD. The purpose of this information report is to share an update with the Board of Directors regarding 2 community-to-community forums that are being planned by the Lillooet Tribal Council, the District of Lillooet, and SLRD staff, which are tentatively scheduled to occur in the first half of 2024. So earlier this year, both the District of Lillooet and the Lillooet Tribal Council each submitted community-to-community program applications to UBCM, and both applications were approved for $10,000, which is the maximum available. So we've held a couple of staff level meetings thus far to talk about those events. They are expected to each be a full day, professionally facilitated, catered gathering. The first meeting will be focused on relationship building and provide opportunities for participants to share their perspectives regarding the value of partnerships and what it means to be in right relation. And it's also going to include opportunities to discuss the successes and challenges related to the priorities that were established at previous gatherings. So just a note there, the SLRD hosted a gathering in Houston in 2016. And I believe most of the Board of Directors was there at the time, along with Lillooet Tribal Council, communities, and District of Lillooet. There was another community-to-community forum that happened in 2019, and I believe Director Birch Jones was present. That was a meeting that was organized between the District of Lillooet and the Lillooet Tribal Council. I was away on personal leave at the time, and so the SLRD didn't have much input in terms of organizing that event, but Director Birch Jones was there. So when we're talking about priorities established at previous gatherings, the 2016 gathering priorities that were established there would be included, but also there was a report that came out of that 2019 gathering as well with certain priorities that were established. So we'd be looking at reviewing priorities and where we've come from those meetings and then establishing next steps. There has been talk about the potential to include a guest speaker on a topic that's of interest to all participants, and the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples has been raised as a possibility to have a guest speaker. So that's the first event. The second event is going to be focused mostly on the Statliam Cultural Center project, which has been identified as a project of mutual interest and a key opportunity to build understanding and demonstrate reconciliation in action. Both of those events are targeted for the first half of 2024. However, the District of Lillooet, I believe, is in the process of hiring a new Chief Administrative Officer. Director Hopful may have an update on that, but we're sort of in a bit of a holding pattern until we've got the capacity to move forward with planning, but we are targeting the first half of 2024. And we'll have a staff level organizing committee working together to design the event agendas. In the last discussion, we talked about in terms of invitees, it will be all of the Lillooet Tribal Center, Lillooet Tribal Council communities, as well as Papatla Council and the community of Clequet, District of Lillooet, and SLRD areas A and B directors and senior staff and the board chair. And with that, I'll just open it up for questions.
Thank you. Jeanette, could I make one correction in your report, page 3? It's true, I was at the 2019 forum, and I'm listed as SLRD Electoral Area A, and that should be B.
Thank you.
With that, I see Director Hopful's hand up. Just by the way, Nikki's going to help me with acknowledging the order of speakers. So I do see Lori. Go ahead.
You had Director Rainbow was first, and then.
All righty, Tony.
Just a couple of things. First of all, I think we should add to the list of First Nations where Jenna's on the land of the Squamish people, and we didn't mention that in our acknowledgements at the beginning. We talked about the Lillooet and the Northern Statlium. So I'd just like to correct that. And second, just a question, I guess Vivian could answer this. That forum that you were at, is that the one where Linda Flynn gave that SLRD 101 thing that I came to?
No, that was a different event. Yes, and Tony, you also came up with Linda when we went up to Squamish. Gee, that seems a long time ago. But no, this the one that Jeanette's referring to was a proper community to community. It was just
okay.
Lori.
Thank you. So just in response to Tony's, like I was at the 2016 and the 2019, but as a counselor at 2019, but the 2016, Linda Flynn was there. I remember Linda Flynn being there at the 2016, the very first one that we had.
Yeah.
Regardless. So the dates for the Northern Statlium gatherings, I know they've not been confirmed, but they're expected to take place in the first half of 2024. How do we pick those dates? Because everybody's got such a full schedule. Is there a choice of dates, or are we just going to lay those dates out and say this is when it's going to be, and all that can make it great, all that can't not? Or are we going to give a choice like a doodle poll, or how does that work?
I could, through the chair. Yeah, so we will have a staff level organizing committee. Typically what we do in the past is the Lillooet Tribal Council representative, District of Lillooet representative, and myself would discuss a few different date options that could work just depending on where their council meetings are. And then we would go back to our respective board and council with a couple of options and then sort of come back and choose a date.
Okay, perfect, thanks. And as for the CAO, we are looking for a CAO. We have I've heard about 25 applicants, and it's closing tomorrow. So we will hopefully have a CAO in the next few months. Thanks.
I
Chair,
believe, yes. Go
Director
ahead.
Demare, Director Pettingill, and Director Stoner is my list of speakers.
Okay, please proceed in that order.
Thank you, Vivian. Jeanette, this is still positive. We finally have the C2Cs happening. I've got one question is, will the area directors like Vivian and myself have any input into the agenda?
Yeah, I would say so. What we could do is when we have the next staff level organizing committee, we'll talk about sort of an agenda format, and then maybe that could be shared at an EAD meeting for discussion and for input.
Yes, that'd be great. I've got one particular topic I want to present to the, to the agenda, and that's a trail strategy for the Northern SLRD. No matter what we do, we'll have to engage them in that.
Jeanette, please just proceed. Yeah.
Yeah, just in response to that, on the 2019 meeting, tourism and trails was actually part of that meeting. So that would be something that we'll be getting discussed sort of in response to where we've come. So we'll make sure that that gets on as a discussion item for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Try and look at the owl. It's weird. It sounds like at a previous iteration, the whole board was there. Is there an opportunity to explore that for these, even if it's just as an observer and just thinking of our roles as, we're responsible for the whole region, and so to have an understanding and hear the conversations. I mean, if the First Nations would prefer a smaller group from our side, that's one thing, but if there's an opportunity for us all to participate, I'd be very interested in understanding what the potential is there.
Yeah, through the chair, I'd just like to say, so the meeting that we held in 2016 was funded through the SLRD. So we had a little bit more leeway in terms of the guest list. But certainly that will be, I could raise that at the staff level organizing committee and let them know that there may be interest from other directors to attend and see if that could be possible for sure. Yeah.
Can I just add to that? Chair, how do we do this?
Director Rainbow just wants to add to that, those comments.
Yeah, I was at that, we were all at that 2016 meeting, and I think it was enormously valuable to the board as a whole. And if we can arrange it, that we can do that again and actually be participants. And I think it was good both ways. So I support that.
Dr. Stoner, please, you're up next, please.
Thank you. Through the chair. Yeah, I was going to ask a similar question to Director Pettingill, just recognizing the balance there of having the right people in the room, but also trying to understand our roles and our relationships as decision makers for, in particularly land use, but so many things that happen on these traditional unceded territories. I think starting to build those relations across the board could be helpful. I don't think it necessarily needs to be this one. But I think my question kind of goes across it. Your three reports, Ms. Naden, are all quite connected, and this is all excellent work. And I have a few questions just in terms of, one, making sure, like, I appreciate the importance of these C2Cs, but making sure that we have the capacity to then implement and action. As I read through some of the next steps of the ones with Lillooet Nation in particular, I feel like some of the work hasn't been done on our side yet. And so I'm just curious if you can speak to that a little bit in terms of timing, like where do we place these C2C forums relative to our ability to actually action some of the truth and structural things that we need to do within our own organization?
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, and one that, the third report, when we're sort of talking about the full strategy, might be an appropriate place to address that. But I will say that, currently, in terms of attending staff level organizing committees for community to community forum planning, that's certainly something that I have the capacity to do within the amount of time that I have. But yeah, like once we start getting into the actual work that we need to do internally, depending on where the priorities are, that will take quite a bit more time. But I feel like with the community forums, keeping those moving forward is something that I can do within the scope of my current role. Yeah.
Yeah, that's helpful. And I just want to make sure that on the other side, that the Statlium and the Lillooet for both of these are equally as interested in continuing to participate in the community forums, knowing that there's been a bit of a lag on the implementation side on our end. I think that's just like, that's one thing, if we had the capacity to organize another C2C, I see the potential risk of hosting that and then it landing flat. And I just want to make sure that we're not setting ourselves up for failure by doing this too soon.
If I could maybe just speak to that, you know, it's a really good point. There was a lot of sort of priorities established at the 2019 Northern Statlium Forum, and it might be a good idea to sort of discuss that as a board. Once I sort of have a better idea of what the current priorities are, so that we can review those as a board and know sort of where our priorities are and how we're going to be able to fulfill things moving forward so that we go into the meeting prepared.
Yeah, I think that would be a helpful conversation to have in advance. Thank you.
Here we have one more. Director Rainbow has another question.
Just want a comment following up on the discussion. In 2014, when the board established its goals, our first goal, our number one goal, was to develop our relationships with our First Nations neighbours. In 2018, when the board developed its goals, they scratched that one off and said, no, we don't need that as a separate goal. We'll just incorporate that into everything else we do. And quite frankly, I don't think that works. I think we're now, we need to sort of revisit that, discuss that again. And if this is important to us, then we have to make it clear to ourselves and to our First Nations partners and to the community that this is a major goal and it's something we're prepared to commit resources to. And this is a good time to think about that going into budget season. Thank you.
Thank you. I do see Director Hopful.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that, you know, like, thank you for organizing this. I wonder if Jim MacArthur will be kind of the MC. I know he has been in the past, but I'm not sure if he's still in that role. I just texted him to see if he was still in that role or not. So again, I think he would be a really good person to oversee this, as he has before. And I really think that, you know, especially Loa, we've really worked hard on our relationships with our Statliam neighbors. And I really feel that these C2Cs are fundamentally important to our communities, to our relationships, to working together. And again, I just want to thank you for the work that you've done here.
Thanks very much through the chair. Yeah, so Jim MacArthur is involved. He's back full-time in his role with the Lillooet Tribal Council, which is excellent news. And I don't think that he facilitated the last meeting. I believe they had, Mike Simpson from Fraser Basin Council, I think they brought in for the facilitator, and we've used him in the past as well. So Jim is involved in the planning, and certainly it was the District of Lillooet CAO, myself and Jim MacArthur that have been having the meetings thus far. And we would be looking at bringing in a professional facilitator, Mike Simpson, or somebody similar to come in and actually facilitate the meeting, but he will definitely be involved in the planning.
Thank you. And I'll just say, Jeanette, Mike Simpson is not working for Fraser Basin anymore, but he's doing some contract work as an individual, and he's been facilitating our wildfire group in area B and A, Lillooet, and he's been doing an excellent job. And he was involved with the agriculture plan, as you know, in previous forums. So I'm very comfortable with him just because he he knows our territory very well and he already has the relationship. So I have his new contact information just in case you don't. And also, I want to say I'm really proud of the work that the hub is doing as far as reconciliation with workshops from, Kim North has invited some local experts to come in and provide cultural orientation and legal information. I think that one's going on today about this sort of Statlium government workshops, promotion of Statlium books, art. It's really been good. And a large part of that, part of that is funded through our program, Jeanette, with the NDIT economic development that we put towards the hub. So we're supporting that. And then I also get requests for select funds from time to time. And I'm really pleased with what the hub's been able to do there. Are there other questions or comments? I'm not seeing any, Nikki. In that case, I think we need a motion to receive the information report moved by Director Crompton, seconded by Director Stoner. Are there any opposed? Motion carried. And I believe we also need a motion for the 3-4 that's under 8.8. Are we ready to do that? Moved by Director Hopfull. Seconded.
One moment, we have on the last that for the SLRD chair and CAO to be authorized, that needs to be done separately. So
Okay.
just this week for the first three.
Director Hopfull, can I change that? Or who moved the first 3 dots? Yep, moved and seconded. Any opposed? Motion carried. And then the 4th that the SLRD chair or CAO be authorized to sign contracts or applications regarding any grants and agreements related to this program. A motion. Director Hopfull, seconded by Director Demare. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. Thank you, Jeanette. It's good work.
You're welcome. So are all three, I thought that we were going to still be, I wasn't sure, I didn't realize that we were doing all 3 reports at once.
We did.
Well,
3 resolutions. My understanding is we're moving to 8.9.
Okay, but 8.8 was the Nuke 112, which I haven't spoken to yet.
No, be good idea.
well, the order, I may have the order wrong, but please go ahead, Jeanette, and please add to that, to those comments.
You can speak to it knowing that we've already approved everything.
Right. I was anticipating approval anyway.
There you go.
And yeah, it's just with regards to the Nuke 112 gathering, that everybody is clearly in favor of. So we do have a staff level organizing committee for that as well, which is the CAO of Lillooet Nation, SLRD CAO, and the CAO at Village of Pemberton, and also 3 staff supports as well. So it's a little bit more of a robust organizing committee. Just a couple of key points with that one. We will be inviting the other Southern Statlium communities to participate as well. And the focus will be relationship building and the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. So an opportunity at the 2022 gathering, there was a recommendation that the Village of Pemberton and the SLRD go back and sort of reflect on what we've been doing and what we're prepared to do moving forward in terms of the relationship. So this will be an opportunity for us to talk about that, and it will also be an opportunity for Lillooet Nation and potentially other Statlium communities to speak to us about the importance of the UN Declaration and And yeah, so that the gathering will be focused on that. And currently the budget that's just been approved is for $11,000, but I did want to just point out that that doesn't include a guest speaker. And there has been talk about that. So at the organizing committee, we discussed that if there are additional costs over and above the 11,000, that we'd be looking at doing a cost share on that. So the $10,000 of the bulk of the funding will be coming from the community to community forum program, assuming that we get approved, which we likely will. And if we don't, then I will come back with for more direction on whether or not to proceed. So that's all for that one, unless there's questions.
Director Rainbow had a question or comment.
Yeah, a comment first of all. I fully support the work that you're doing, and think you're doing really great work in this area. My question is, and I recognise you're loaded at the moment, so it's not something you're not in a position to take on lots more work. But have we considered doing a C2C forum with the Squamish Nation? I wonder what they, if they're looking at the SLRD and seeing all this that's going on in the north. If there's ever a question in their minds, so what about us? It's something I think we should consider in the future.
Yeah, if I could speak to that through the chair. We have considered it. And a few years ago, we did actually have a staff level meeting with Squamish Nation, but that was several years ago. And at the time there wasn't really an interest from Squamish Nation, like in terms of hosting that type of a meeting. And so we didn't pursue it. But it is something that's on our radar. And I believe District of Squamish and Squamish Nation have just signed another protocol agreement. So this is something that we're trying to learn from District of Squamish and what they're doing in terms of Squamish Nation. But certainly as we have more capacity, it might be something that we could pursue. But capacity is definitely the reason why we haven't pursued it to date.
Again, we're coming up to budget time, and if it's important to us, maybe we need to make some accommodation for it in our budgets.
I see Director Stoner.
Yeah, just on this point, I think we could also just do a little bit of work between whether it's at the director level or Squamish, District of Squamish reaching out a bit more to figure out where in some of our relationship building community forums that we can better integrate the SLRD into that work with Squamish Nation. I don't think we've actually done a regional approach with Whistler, SLRD, District of Squamish, Squamish Nation. So that might be something that as we continue down this road and maybe we have some more capacity, that's something that we should start to think about over time.
Director Pendill is up next.
Yeah, two things. I appreciate this. I think it's a good idea. We do also have the House on Community Forum, which in some ways brings us together with Squamish Nation a little bit. I don't think it's quite as comprehensive as I would like, but there are some discussions at least. But the other thing, and just for clarity, because we bounced around these resolutions, my comments about a desire where possible, where it makes sense for more of the board to participate, I think applies to all of these meetings from my perspective. If we can find a way.
Thank you. And I see Director Herford.
Hello, thank you. I'll just add my voice to I would love to be able to attend at any of these events if that's appropriate, and particularly as we to be more familiar with the areas and the issues and of course the peoples that our body interacts with would really help from a context piece for me. So but I understand the need for balance and there's many considerations, but I see the area directors and the chair being a mandatory participation and the others being optional if possible. So I do think that's extremely valuable for me personally. So I just wanted to add my voice to that.
I see Director Richmond, Nikki. Yeah.
I also have Ms. Naden would like to comment as well. Is that directly to Director Herford's comments?
Yeah, and to Director Pettingill as well. I just wanted to say that the SLRD is the lead applicant on the New Quintual gathering, and it actually already has been discussed at the organizing committee level that the full board would be invited to participate, and has been invited to participate in all of the New Quintual gatherings in the past as well. Thank you.
And Director Richmond is.
I totally get it and support the idea of having all the board attend. I want to make sure, and full faith in Jeanette and the rest of the organizing committee, obviously, but I just want to make sure that, the last New Quintual we had, for instance, was not, there wasn't a huge attendance, but it was very intimate and it was very powerful. And there was some very difficult conversations. And not that, Armand's going to take away from that, but I want to make sure that this doesn't become a spectator sport. This is a venue for difficult conversations. This is a venue for relationship building. And I totally agree. I mean, this is, like you say, these are the communities we interact with us at the SLRD. So I get that and support it, but I just want to make sure we don't get to a point where we've lost the intimacy, we've lost the level of comfort here locally to have some of the difficult conversations. Thank you.
Okay, I can't see Jeanette, but I can see Director Crompton and then Director Stoner.
Thanks, Chair. Ms. Naden, what does the word New Quintual mean? I thought it meant like working together for. Do you remember?
Yeah, so through the chair, New Quintual Wiku Stakman Call is the full phrase, and it means we help each other to find the way. So New Quintual means we help each other, loosely translated.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to sort of join Director Richmond in that comment. I do see these as working meetings, and they've been so good in the past, and I think that's a really good point as we go into it. Whoever goes into it, just keeping that working together aspect of it in the front of our minds. So thanks for that reminder, Director Richmond.
Director Stoner, did you still have a question or comment?
Yeah, just briefly, just want to echo my previous director's comments, and it goes back to some of my earlier comments of also being, I think, really important for us to do the work internally before we start to send folks into these meetings. So going, again, foreshadowing the next report that we're going to get from Ms. Naden, but really doing some of the truth piece and the learning within our board before we start to send more folks to some of these working meetings where there is established relationships, I think would be a worthwhile endeavor.
Thank you. I don't see any more hands. Nikki, do you? No? Also, I just want to say kudos to Pemberton. I see reading in the Peak that your OCP is being put on hold while you do some consultation with Lillooet and the Statly or the Southern Statlium nations there. And I thought, good on you guys. And I hope
Thanks,
that goes well. Yeah.
I'll give you, if we have time, I'll give a couple more details during our roundtable.
Very good. And apologies for getting that out of order. We've approved the resolutions. Is that good? Thank you. We'll move on to 8.9. Direction request, SLRD, Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation, next steps. And I'm just reading it over. That we received the summary, an update, and provide direction to staff with respect. Have we covered this off now? Okay. Would you like to pick it up, Jeanette, for some specific guidance to us?
Yes, please. Thanks, everyone. So once again, just a reminder, my name is Jeanette Naden, Community and Indigenous Relations Advisor for the SLRD. And this report is a direction request report. Presented an information report back in May at a committee of the whole meeting. And there was a really great discussion from around the table with the directors about the Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation function at the SLRD. And I reviewed the lives, or I guess it wasn't a live stream. I reviewed the recording of the meeting several times and actually took a lot of notes on everything that was said. And it all boiled down into 4 key themes, which I've included in this report. The first one being that we need to be strategic, deliberate, and committed. And there was agreement around the table to take a planning to plan approach, beginning with a framework to guide us as an important first step. And then there was lots of comments about the need to continue the relationship building that we've already started, that face-to-face encounters are a really important learning opportunity. The third was that we need to embed cultural awareness and related training into our organizational culture, which speaks to Director Stoner's comments from the previous reports, that we need to do some internal work before we can engage in a meaningful, respectful, effective way. And then the fourth point was that it's time for us to do more, that going to meetings and building relationships is good, but it's not enough. In the last few months, it's become even more clear that we need to take substantive actions on the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, to understand what that means and what the implications are for local government. Both the province and the federal government now have enacted legislation to put the United Nations Declaration into law. And so over the next few years, there could be a lot of changes coming down for local government in terms of how we do business. So the remainder of the report sort of speaks to those 4 themes and what we've been doing since May in terms of that work. So in terms of the planning to plan approach, developing a framework could be our first step. And through discussion at the staff level and also with counterparts at other local governments, it's really, I can't develop a framework by myself. We need to have direction from the board in terms of what is our vision for reconciliation. In 2016, we declared that we were a regional district of reconciliation and that we were going to work towards turning those words into actions. But what does being a regional district of reconciliation look like? And what does it feel like? And how ready are we as an organization to actually pursue this work? What are the structural conditions that we need to look at in terms of existing legislation, our policies, our procedures, our financial and human resources? And then also, what are the underlying attitudes and biases and values and norms around this table and also in the organization that can create resistance to change? So one of the things that we've been thinking about is the possibility of retaining an outside facilitator to lead us through a process to help us understand what our vision for reconciliation might look like, and what is our organizational readiness to pursue the work. As an example, the Village of Pemberton recently hired Bob Purdy from the Fraser Basin Council to lead them in a full day facilitated workshop to help their elected officials and senior staff understand how to move forward on their journey towards realizing the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People and what that would mean for their organization. And from what I understand, it was a powerful and worthwhile exercise. I have spoken with Bob Purdy. I haven't requested a proposal specifically from him, but he did indicate that doing a similar workshop for the SLRD board and senior staff would probably cost somewhere in the neighborhood of about $10,000. And we could look at, in terms of outcomes, I've listed them in the report, but developing a shared internal vision of what it means to be a regional district of reconciliation, articulating the values and principles to guide our relationship building and reconciliation efforts. An assessment, a general assessment of where we're at in terms of our current status of our relationships with First Nations, and an assessment of our organizational readiness, some strategic objectives, and the creation of a very preliminary action plan that would help us move forward. There are other options as well. In May, we had talked about, we used Comox Valley Regional District as an example. They undertook a more robust process. They hired a consulting firm to actually write a report that was very thorough and comprehensive. And I don't actually know how much that cost, but it would have been a lot more than $10,000. So I guess there's sort of one of the things I wanted to get some direction on today was, do we want to do a full day session? Do we want to do a longer process to get those, the vision and the principles and the values in place? But I do believe that having some more direction from the board in terms of the vision and principles to help move us forward would be very helpful. So that's the planning to plan approach. And then the second theme was continued relationship building. We've already discussed now the community to community forums that we're going to be planning for 2024. So I won't spend a lot of time talking about that again. The third theme was organizational change through education and training. I think we all recognize that education is the foundation of reconciliation. And we don't really know what we don't know. So learning is really important. We are in the process of developing an Indigenous relations training plan. We're looking at having various modules. So when staff are first onboarded, there would be an introductory course that would have to be completed within the first 6 months. I'm going to be looking at developing, that would be probably delivered by an external third party. And then I'll be looking at developing more of a specific Indigenous relations presentation for new staff that will just go over more of the specifics in terms of the context for Indigenous relations in the SLRD. And then we'll be looking at adding in, so onboarding within 6 months and 2 years of training, and then also providing staff with additional learning opportunities depending on their roles at work. And then also looking at developing a resource library, which I've started collecting over the years, a variety of videos, presentations, books, articles, podcasts that staff, board, and even the public, we could put this on our new website, just to help people explore Indigenous history, colonization, other reconciliation related topics, looking at potentially doing more specific training on the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. This is something that I'll just speak to in a minute. The last thing I wanted to talk about in terms of the training plan was the idea of creating what I would call a community of practice within the organization. So this is a staff level group that would come together, say quarterly, of interested people from various departments to just talk about what they're learning, what their challenges are in their jobs, so that we can try to help each other learn and support each other through the learning. So that's sort of the training piece. Hoping to have a more built out training plan in time for budget season so that we can budget for that accordingly. And then the fourth theme was acting on the United Nations Declaration and the TRC calls to action. So First Nations want to see real action being taken. And the letter that I believe hasn't been received yet, but it's coming up on the agenda from Lillooet Nation sort of speaks to that. Highlights the importance of us really starting to understand what the United Nations Declaration means and what are the implications for local government. At the conference, the UBCM conference last week, there was a study session on the declaration, and I'm not sure if any of the directors were able to attend, but I read an article that came out afterwards, and it sounded like it was a pretty good session. And a couple of the things that came out of that meeting were just that raising awareness of the systemic inequalities that are continuing to impact Indigenous people's lives is really important. I actually attended with the SLRD Director of Strategic Services was also there. A seminar on Friday called Implementing UNDRIP and Reaffirming Indigenous Rights to Self-Determination. It was a very interesting day. They had representatives from the province talking about the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act and their action plan. And there was also representatives from the federal government talking about the United Nations Declarations Act, which is the federal legislation. So we got updates on that, along with a few other things. And so my plan now is to summarize what I learned and through that seminar, and I will be making a presentation to the SLRD senior leadership team and potentially to the board if there's interest at an upcoming meeting, just to sort of share what we learned about that. And then again, just in terms of the UN declaration, it has been expressed with Northern St'át'imc and with the Nukw'intwal, with Lillooet Nation, that this is an interest. And so it likely will be, it'll be a key theme of those meetings as well. And so bringing in guest speakers potentially to speak to that as part of those meetings. And then there may be an opportunity to actually do something more regionally as well, because District of Squamish, RMOW, we may maybe there's an interest in actually bringing in, holding some sort of a meeting specifically on the UN declaration and local governments. The meeting that I attended on Friday was good, but it wasn't focused on implications for local government. So this is something that is still emerging. And but there are provincial legislation many of it has been changed, and some of it is in the process of being changed. The Emergency Programs Act is getting tabled. The updates to that is getting tabled on the 3rd of October. So that will be very interesting to see how that act is being changed in terms of increasing the standard for consultation with First Nations through the emergency program. So yeah, lots of changes coming down the pipe that we need to be aware of and that we need to be prepared for. In terms of other actions, you may have noticed that my title has been changed to Community and Indigenous Relations Advisor. So I am still responsible for a limited economic development role. We don't do much in the way of economic development currently. But I am still responsible for administering the Northern Development Initiative Trust grants for areas A and B. So that's still part of my role. But my focus is primarily now Indigenous relations and moving forward with those priorities that have been established. And then the last thing that I wanted to point out, in terms of the discussion in May, one thing that didn't get talked about in May that has been talked about a lot in previous meetings was the need to take our work and broaden it to the community level to really improve our communication with the public in terms of what we're doing, but then also trying to find ways to engage the public in the work. This is something that has come up at the Nukw'intwal table specifically, but I've talked about it with Northern St'át'imc communities as well. And that's actually one of the reasons why we're so supportive of the hub in Lillooet in Area B and its work, because that's exactly what the hub is doing. They are taking the spirit of Nukw'intwal and they are bringing people together and building bridges across community. And it's really great to see the work that they're doing. In terms of Area C and the village of Pemberton, this is something that we need to be aware of as well. We've been funding through the PDIF funds, the Wellness Almanac, which is an online blog that has been running now for 10 or 11 years. And at the end of this year, that funding will cease. And the current producer of the Wellness Almanac has indicated that she's no longer able to continue working on that initiative. So this is something that we do have an intergovernmental relations committee with the New Quintual group. And we'll be looking at scheduling a meeting of that committee early in 2024. That's Area C Director Russell Mack, Chief Dean, Mayor Mike Richmond, and then there's staff support from the organizations as well. So looking at this idea of broadening the scope of New Quintual to involve the community. So I just wanted to put that out there today because it wasn't discussed explicitly in May, and I don't want that to be lost because I think engagement, community engagement and communication is really important to this work. And just on a final note, we are going to be updating our website. I'm not exactly sure when that project is starting, but I will be doing a comprehensive review of the content on our website in terms of First Nations and reconciliation, and hoping to add a lot more to that when the new website is launched. So I'll leave it at that, and certainly welcome questions and comments and direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeanette. And I'm really pleased that you're our Community and Indigenous Relations Advisor, and also that you're still going to carry those NDIT projects that are so important. Okay. I see bing, 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 3 hands go up by Nikki.
I have a listing going. So I have Director Richmond, Pettingill, Stoner, Koppel, and Rainbow.
Thanks, Jeanette. Great report as always. Just a couple of quick notes. There was a lot in there, so I won't take too much time. Just a little bit of feedback on the Bob Purdy session for the board. It was a good day. We had Halapal, the cultural chief for Lillooet, opened the day for us on his own invitation. We held it at Cecil, and he heard that we were using that space and asked if he could open it, and we're very thankful he did. He made a great opening presentation. So it was a good day. I think it's of value. I would say 2 things. Number one, we were a little uncomfortable early on with the fact that we were there to talk about about First Nation relations and about UNDRIP, and there was no, and it was being led by a white guy. I'll just put it out that way. There was no input on UNDRIP or the concept from anybody Indigenous or from the area. So I think that was an element that was missing. Again, having Halapau open it for us helped fill that gap a little bit, but I think that it could be done a little bit better. But it was a good day. On the topic of UNDRIP, just we at the village would be really happy in terms of capacity building to, look at sharing some of the work and figuring out how we adopt UNDRIP as local governments. And as we know, we've committed to it in a number of ways at the village. We've committed to adopting the principles of UNDRIP, but we all know that there's legal implications that need to be sorted out in terms of how municipalities consult and completely adopt it. So with that work, we're happy to share in the load and work collaboratively on that one if there's a desire. And in terms of your last comment, or some of your last comments about bringing it to a community level, Jeanette, like you say, it's something we've talked a lot about at New Quintual, and I think for the organizing committee, whether it's at our intergovernmental committee or at the actual gathering, definitely that should be a big agenda item, is how do we take some of this work and go to the community with it? We've talked about it, but we've never really come out with any action. So yeah, I'd like to see that on there somewhere. Thanks again, Jeanette.
A couple things, and maybe one of my colleagues can clarify a bit if I get some of it wrong, but one of the conversations from UBCM was another municipality that sounds like they're taking a step back from some of their truth and reconciliation work. They're sort of outward facing to really focus on the truth piece. And I gather, we tend to handle the truth piece a little more superficially, sort of acknowledge, yes, there's been historic wrongs, and then we focus on the reconciliation piece. And I think they're feeling, and I believe after some feedback from some of the First Nations they interact with, that they need to spend a lot more time understanding the specifics of what historically what some of the challenges have been, and to provide, I think, even for themselves that context so they can get to the reconciliation piece in a more constructive way. And so you know, that's an interesting perspective, and I wonder if there's value in us considering, do we need to put a bit more focus on some of the truth pieces before we jump to some of the reconciliation pieces, or do we do them parallel? How do we manage that? Is a really interesting thought, I guess. And then just want to clarify, you know, I spoke a couple of times about, you know, if there's any way for us to be involved in these discussions. I think in speaking to the plan, I don't want to give direction on specifics. I just sort of want to underscore my desire to participate, to be involved, to help move this along. And so whatever is best to make that happen, and very eager, if I can be involved, to help. But, you know, if that's not the best way, then, you know, I don't need to be there if you know, it's not helpful. And then just to reinforce something one of my other colleagues has said, let's make sure our upcoming budget has the resource asks to make sure we're moving this forward effectively.
I have Director Stoner next.
Thank you. Through the chair, thanks for summarizing the conversation we had back in May in a way that is digestible and has a little bit of structure to it. The 4 buckets were helpful as a way to think about this moving forward. My first question is, do we have anything in our current budget that we could use to start building the foundation around knowledge and training? Recognizing that there's a bigger piece that needs to happen in a more formal way for staff and board and onboarding, but is just in terms of, like, I've been on this board since 2020-ish. And haven't actually done any sort of building around truth and reconciliation at the board level. And I think that would be a really helpful place to start before we dive into, like, making a plan, planning to make a plan. And so I just wonder if there's a piece there that we can move while we start to plan for the 2024 budget.
So through the chair, thanks for that question. We do have, I believe there's a $7,000 that had been allocated in previous budgets for training. There was the human resources manager here has been working on organizing that, and it was planned to be rolled out this summer, but then with the EOC being activated, that became impossible. But she is looking at offering 2 separate 3-hour online seminars. I believe that she's looking at Indigenous corporate training as the service provider for delivering those learnings, and she's targeting November for those. So I don't have all the specific information on that, but that would be a staff and board would be available to participate in those. And then we also do have, and I don't have the specific number at the top of my head, but there is, it's a relationship building reserve. And I believe there's about $7,500 in it right now. I had earmarked $1,000 of that to be putting towards my New Quintual budget for the 2024 gathering. So there, you know, call it $6,000 or $6,500 left in there. And perhaps that could be something that could be looked at in terms of offering, like, a board, bringing, like, maybe it's bringing in United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples subject matter expert or something to do, you know, a board training at an upcoming committee of the whole meeting or something like that. We could look at doing something if that's of interest.
Yeah, that's helpful. And then just a few suggestions on other folks that I've interacted with on some of these pieces. Nahanni Creative, Squamish Nation, but does a lot of work on building Indigenous relations and understanding within municipalities as well as corporate culture. I think she recently started a PhD, but she is still doing some work, but has some really interactive pieces that she can provide as facilitated work. The other one is building understanding through the village. is a really powerful experiential kind of understanding and learning around the impacts of residential schools that is maybe worth looking at as well. So I know there's lots of resources out there. And then the other thought that I had was reaching out to the folks. You put it in your last report, Ms. Naden. The recent report that came out from Women Building Cities, the Truth and Reconciliation Calls to Action in BC Municipalities. And I wonder if just reaching out to the authors of that report might be another avenue to think about how we actually start to action that, given like the strength of that report and the recommendations in it. They might be good resources for us to start to think about how we action that. Just some suggestions. Thanks.
Okay, I have, this will be the next order, Director Hopeful, Rainbow, Hereford, and Demare.
Thank you. Again, Jeanette, great report that you've done. So with regards to UNDRIP and planning, I find that C2Cs are a lot about listening, and I'm just wondering if we can't take some of our potential planning of the future and gear that towards the facilitator for the framework of that C2C. And secondly, I'd also like to say that the library education resources, I think that's a really important piece. And I know that the health authorities, particularly Interior Health, has done a lot of work on that. And there has been a lot of books are available, a lot of videos are available. I watched an 8-piece module set that was quite lengthy that Interior Health put out. It was mandatory for everybody to watch. And I think that having that library piece and education piece to all of us as well as to the community would be very beneficial. That's it for me. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. I know the comment you made about the value of hub in the Lillooet area, and Jay Russell and See the Sky Community Services are working in the Pemberton area and certainly communicating with the Lillooet Nation. I'm just wondering if it would be worthwhile having Jay come and talk to us about that work and see if we can either work with them in some way or piggyback on it. So can I leave that with you, Jenna, or to contact it? Okay, thanks. And then a follow up on comments that Director Richmond was saying. I've been in sessions with Bob Purdy, and he's very knowledgeable. He's very personable. He does a great job. But as Mike correctly notes, he is white, and that sort of detracts a little bit. I was at a session at UBCM 3 or 4 years ago now, and I can't remember the name of the person that ran it. I have it at home, so I could send it to you later. But he was his First Nations, and his presentation was powerful. It was because what he was talking about. It's different when you're hearing it directly from a First Nations person. It's different from when somebody like me tries to describe what the situation is. And so I'm really in favor of having a session, sort of whatever we want to call it, a workshop, an education session, whatever. But I would strongly suggest that we have a First Nations person lead it. The talent is there, the experience is there, the capability is there, and we need to tap into it.
Dr. Hereford?
Yeah, thank you. Director Stoner sort of covered off most of my points around ensuring that we're starting from the right point before we go and try to accomplish some work together as far as really understanding the context of where we are, and that's not just for the board, but for the but for the employees of the organization. And as far as recommendations go, I know this isn't we don't want to turn this into just a peer who we've worked with and what's been, this isn't a marketing session for these folks, but the building bridges for understanding the village was a really impactful piece for me personally, and I really recommend that. And it's something that we've had multiple times through the district as part of our onboarding process and sort of ongoing training. I believe it equips us all to truly understand, or moves our understanding forward of why sort of the next steps of work are so important. So I suppose I'm adding my voice to that, ensuring that we take that step back and really learn about where we are and why those next actions, what are very, very important, are so necessary, and just how much weight we should be giving to those. So building bridges through understanding the village, and I'm happy to send a link through. Very impactful, but overall, I'm quite excited that this is a conversation that we're having here today. So thank you.
Director Demare?
Thank you. Yeah, it seems to me right now all I'm thinking about is money for all the various things that are going on in our valley. But yesterday we talked about, at least I did, about the COVID restart fund that we got left, $90,000, $92,000, I think it was. I think, and Suzanne was going to come and bring a report. I think that's excellent money just for what we're talking about. I think we could set aside however much we want to this topic. So I really want, Nikki, if you could work with Suzanne on it and see if we can actually use some of those funds for it. I think it'd be perfect. We're not doing that, the bandwidth survey. So I think that was $42,000 that could go to this. And as some of you know and some don't know, I am, through the SLRD, an ex officio on the BRVCA board. At the upcoming November roundtable, I'll be doing a presentation on the BRVCA, so you fully understand it. I've got the presentation already made. I'm going to modify it a bit after this wildfire. But the Hoiston has reached out to the BRVCA, and I've offered to go and do a presentation to the Hoiston Council on the BRVCA, because I've developed that presentation. So we're continually working with our First Nations neighbors, and we're learning as we're going. But all this training and everything that Jeanette has talked about, we have to start moving forward. So thank you.
Director Crompton, you're next.
Thanks very much. I think what I'm hearing from my colleagues is an expression of a desire to work with facilitators with sort of direct experience. And we found in Whistler, the Squamish-Lillooet Cultural Center is extremely effective at sharing and helping us connect to the Squamish Nation, the Lillooet Nation. And I just wanted to, so I forget who said it, maybe it was Director Herford, but it seems to me that the work we're doing is very connected to place and to people. And it seems that the relationships that Jeanette has built over the last 10 years with these communities would be a great place to start. I think about reaching out to the Pepetla Council, to other Statliam communities, to the Lillooet, and seeing if they have Statliam or Squamish people who actually do this kind of work. because it is so connected to this place and to these people. So yeah, I'd be really enthusiastic about going through some work that was led by Squamish or Statlium leadership. Thanks for this report. I thought it was great.
That's all I have for the speakers list.
Thank you. And I wondered, interim CAO, if did you want to make any comments back? I saw you put your hand up at one point, and
I did. I just was going to respond to Director Demers' suggestion of using COVID restart funds. I'm not sure it's an eligible expense, but I will definitely connect with Ms. LaFrance on that, and she will be bringing a report forward, I believe, at the next board meeting. So we can provide an update at that time.
thank you. Yeah, I wondered if that would be a fit too. And I also thought, I'm glad for what Director Crompton said, because I was also thinking we've got some pretty good resources, certainly within the Northern Statlium. Kim North is probably an excellent resource for you, Jeanette, in terms of what she's been doing, in terms of cultural work and some of our resources here. And also, Lori, was it SANYAS, Indigenous Cultural Safety, that you took? It's I think a 10-module online training course. Anyway, Interior Health is offering this, and Jeanette, it's put out by the Public Health Service Agency of British Columbia. And that online course has been around for a long time. I took it back when I was with First Nations Health Authority about 15 years ago, and it's the same course. They've been updating it. I was very relieved to see that it's been dramatically updated in the intervening years, and I'm actually enrolled in it again because, as Lori said, Interior Health is offering, indeed insisting that all staff, employees, and board members are offered this training. So
Just to say, I think there is a few of them out there, but the one that I took was probably about 5 or 6 years ago, and it was 8 modules at that time, but maybe they've lengthened it since then. But it's a very good course, and there's multiple.
and it's provincial. So yeah. Thank you very much. And yes, go ahead, Ms. Gilmore and Ms. Stoner.
Nadine, I believe you had a couple of comments she wanted to provide, if you're good with that.
Yes.
Yes, thanks. Through the chair, I just wanted to, there's a few things that got said. First of all, SANYAS is an excellent course. I've taken it. I think it's $300 or something. LGMA actually a couple of years ago had an offering for local government staff to take that one. So that's when I took it. Just a couple of things, the building bridges, again, we've also excellent experiential learning. The Village of Pemberton and the SLRD collaborated on that with support from District of Squamish, I must add, because as you noted, Director Pettingill, this is something that the District of Squamish has been offering for a few years now in terms of its onboarding process. So a few years ago, the day after District of Squamish was doing one of their building bridges, we actually brought the facilitator up and they did they did the course here as well. And we offered it twice in 1 year, and it was really powerful. And actually, I think a lot of the staff at the time and some of the directors took that, and it was really powerful. I did just want to speak to Director Rainbow had a comment about the facilitator, and we do have a couple of names of Indigenous people who do facilitation. Bob Purdy had recommended a woman by the name of Gwen Bridge, and I've checked out her website. She actually helped, I think it was City of Mission, develop their reconciliation principles. But one thing that, and maybe Director Richmond could speak to this, but in terms of the hesitancy about having a non-Indigenous person, sort of an old white guy, for lack of a better term, delivering the facilitation. I think a big part of what we're trying to do here is understand our organizational readiness to engage and to commit to reconciliation. And that's it potentially an uncomfortable conversation, because we need to look at our own internal biases and worldviews and understand that, so that we can understand how we're coming into relationship. So to have an old white guy talk to other similar might actually not be a bad idea, because it's somebody who's done his own learning and his own unlearning and can recognize those blind spots in himself. And so that was something I just wanted to put out there as a sort of a counterpoint. That being said, I also agree that there are Indigenous facilitators who would likely do an excellent job. And what I'm hearing from the discussion.
Can I just respond to that, or add just? Are you still on that? I'm sorry to interrupt you, Jeanette. I just want to catch that point while you're on it, because I 100% agree with you, and there was a lot of value to having Bob facilitating the session. I would just say that as part of the day there, we at the village could have added a component which would have been led by local Indigenous. It helped, again, Ashley or Kyle coming in and making his introduction and his welcome really helped set the context and the tone and the mood for us. And we, again, he invited himself, to be very honest. So we missed that opportunity. I think Bob Purdy's session was good, and I 100% agree with everything you just said, and you said it way better than I would have. So I'm right there with you. I just think we at the village missed a component as part of the day, maybe context setting.
Thank you for that. That's totally fine. And just through the chair, just to complete that, one thing Director Birch Jones had mentioned, and I think Chair Crompton as well, we do have a wealth of resources, learning resources available to us within the region. A woman that's springing immediately to mind is former Chief of Shekawash, Michelle Edwards. And I'm sure some of you have met her before, because she was at that 2016 gathering, and a couple of others as well. And she actually is on the Realizing UNDRIP initiative. They've got a secretariat that's sort of directing their work. And so she might be somebody that we could consider bringing in as a guest speaker, and maybe it's Chief Gelbcall as well. I really like this idea of doing both, like setting some context, hearing from Indigenous people, but then also having the opportunity to have an open discussion amongst ourselves about where we're at and what might need to change in order to move forward in a good way. Thank you.
We had Director Stoner next.
She put her hand up and then disappeared. Oh, here she is.
Sorry, my computer is about to die, so I had to go plug my battery in. I didn't want to get cut off halfway through. So I do think I have a few motions that might help us move forward in this conversation, but I just want to check before I put one on the floor with staff that I heard that we have budget. I just want to make sure that we would have capacity to implement something with that budget in the short to medium term, so before the 2024 budget. Do we feel like we have staff capacity to do some form of training with that training budget, or are we kind of maxed on our planning given the C2Cs and the other work that's going on?
Thanks for that question. I feel like yes, I do have capacity right now to focus on that training piece and organizing this as sort of like the first step to our planning to plan process. I think that it's a priority, and I can make that a priority over the coming months for sure.
Okay, that's great. I just didn't want to direct something that we wouldn't actually be able to execute. So I'm going to put a motion on. I have two motions. I'll start with the first one, which is that staff explore options to apply the 2023 budget for training on truth and reconciliation to start building our foundation of understanding and empathy prior to our 2024 efforts to move into action on reconciliation. And I'll type these out and send them to Angela so she doesn't have to rewatch the recording 8 times.
That's excellent. Thank you, Ms. Stoner. And I saw that Director Crompton seconded it. Is there anyone opposed? That motion's carried. Next one.
And then my second motion would be that staff scope costs for truth and reconciliation training and increase staff for Indigenous relations and bring that back to the 2024 budget discussions.
Also seconded by Director Crompton. And any opposed? Do not see any opposed. Did you want those as resolutions or was just general direction okay? Am I getting off track with this?
I think resolutions is helpful from what I've heard from staff.
Okay, then that's great. So you've got those two. Could I also mention just something, and I did read the report, which was excellent. Thank you, Jeanette. And I saw in there a reference to having C2Cs around emergency response. And I just thought I should let you know, we have on November 8th, Mike Simpson from Fraser Basin organizing our wildfire roundtable. And of course, we'll have our First Nations there as part of debriefing the recent wildfires in Area AB and Lillooet. And so that emergency response is a place where we need good partnerships, and we're always working on that. And we have some pretty good things going on, and Mike's been good facilitating it too. And this is the reason why we're really trying to change the EAD from that day so that Director Demare and I could both be at that very important meeting, which is just for your information. Now, other resolutions, other suggestions, other direction? Ms. Nadon?
Sorry, I just had a clarification about the first resolution about, I didn't quite hear it, but is the $7,000 that was allocated this year for training being reallocated? So does that mean that the sort of those 2 sessions that we were planning to do on Indigenous cultural awareness, that we wouldn't have budget for that? Or I'm just.
There are 2 pots of funds. Is that correct? You mentioned earlier, one that had the 7,000, one that had 7,500.
Correct.
And one of those we're using for what we just referenced there. Are the other funds still available to reallocate?
From the relationship reserve. So this resolution would be regarding the relationship reserve funding and not the funding that was previously used for training. Thank you.
That works, right? Good.
Director, did you? Okay.
Okay. Would we like a motion to receive that report? No, nothing else needs to be done. We've got the resolution. I haven't already moved that one along too. Thank you very much, Jeanette. This is very good work.
Thank you.
Cookstum. The next item on our agenda, 8.10, request for decision, proposed access agreement for 405 Landfill Road in Lillooet. Our lovely Lillooet landfill, and I did see Kristen there on the screen at one point. Okay.
These chairs are quite low. Good morning. My name is Kristen Clark, Director of Strategic Services. And Chair, would you like a presentation or would you like to just move into questions?
Well, I think it's very interesting. I've read the report. A brief presentation would be great, I think.
So BC Hydro has approached the SLRD In the SLRD's capacity as the owner of the land at 405 Landfill Road in Lillooet to request an access agreement. This access is requested as part of BC Hydro's Bridge River Valley project and the associated transmission line upgrade. There is existing staff delegated authority when the entering into agreements is required as part of an SLRD service, which is not the case for this situation, which is why it's here in front of the board. So very limited access is required by BC Hydro a few weeks a year, and landfill operations will not be affected. BC Hydro is offered its standard compensation of $1,000 a year, which is $5,000 for the term. And I recommended that this $5,000 be allocated to the landfill cost center, or alternatively, it could just go into general government. So staff's recommending entering into the access agreement. And I've also included a recommendation to look at how and if staff delegated authority could be expanded to increase administrative efficiencies in the future.
And that all makes very good sense to me. I'd just like to make one comment as Area B here, Kristen. They want to establish buffer zones and some vegetation clearing and drainage improvements may be required. Can we just make a note that they keep in mind to not be fostering the spread of invasive weeds when they do that? I'm not going to tell them how to do that, but just to keep that in mind. And I see Director Hopful. Yes, okay, Nikki, good.
Thank you. I'm hoping that we can keep it in cost center 1902 because I think that we are going to need that in the Lillooet landfill in the coming years. My other question was, it said that staff has recommended that the issue of delegated authority be reviewed and brought back with options in order to increase administrative efficiencies. Can you just talk about that a little bit? And do you think that that's sufficient?
Thank you for that. I think it is sufficient because it'll be part of a bigger look at what areas where the SLRD may or may not be lacking in terms of delegated authority.
Okay. Okay. And you think that the 5,000 is also sufficient?
Thanks for that. I did ask about that because I anticipated that question, and the BC Hydro was quite firm on that number. So if the board directed me to go back, I could, but I did ask for more information about that standard compensation rate.
Okay, thanks, Kristen.
I don't have any other individuals with hands up.
So we're looking for a motion to move the 1, 2, 3 that's and then separate from that the weighted all vote. Is that correct? Or can we?
And then yes, the last one will have to be separate.
I'll move that to first four.
Okay. Director Rainbow, and I saw Director Demare. Anyone opposed? Those 4 that's are carried.
I'll move the fifth one.
Seconded by Director Demare. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. Excellent. Now here, I believe we're looking at some items that we added. Is this the place?
We are going to move that to late business. If we could, we'll do it that way instead of considering it as staff reports.
Correct, right. Okay, So the next item is number 9, director's reports. And the chair's verbal. Jen is in Ottawa, and I'm just very grateful for all of your positive participation and assistance in managing these meetings as we go along. And we are at board roundtable SLRD area updates. Would we like to do that, starting at the top and limiting the presentations to just a couple of minutes would be great, I think. Area A, Saldmare. You're on mute, Sal.
I could take all day and talk about the fire, but I won't.
That's why I said 2 minutes.
But I do wanna talk about some of the things that are happening on the volunteer side, helping out. The BRVCA, through their agreement with Trailer and Pioneer Museum, they have the management agreement, so they manage the museum, and that society is a charitable organization. So through Helps Canada, they started a Bridge River Valley Preservation and Conservation Fund, which is for the wildfire affected properties. So far, they've collected 45,000 and they distributed 10,500 of it to the evacuees. That was when people were evacuated, so that's already started. They also got BRVCA was awarded from United Way $43,555 for emergency relief from a wildfire, and these funds are to be used as per the application that they put in. And some of that money has already gone out for people that lost fridges and freezers, which was quite a few people. And that was mainly due to the power outages that we've had due to the wildfire. And got one more last thing to talk about, is that's UBCM. I wasn't able to attend because I had to be with my constituents during this time. But the 2 SLRD resolutions that went to UBCM were both approved. And one was with Maudie being more transparent with their yearly quantified maintenance plans and project plans. And the other one that had to be spoken to was spoken to by Director Lori Huffel. And I just want to thank her right now for speaking to it. And it was also endorsed. So that was pretty good. So thank you. That's all.
Bravo. Director Hopwell.
Well, thank you. So I have to say the last 2 months have been challenging at best. I'm just going to talk about our staffing. Our corporate officer, Kevin Taylor, he was 35 years old, passed away unexpectedly on August 6th. Jeremy Deniger was our CAO and Kevin's husband. So Jeremy had taken a job in Souk as CAO and had resigned just prior to Kevin's passing. It was their dream to go back to Vancouver Island and be closer to their families. They had moved here from Summerland. And as the following as public knowledge, I wanted to share with you that Kevin passed away from hantavirus, which is a virus that comes from deer mice. Since then, the district has hired a professional company to come in and assess all the district facilities for safety for the rest of our staff. So that has just taken place last week, and I haven't got the final answers on that. I believe it's okay, but you know, who knows? Kevin had gone down to the island. They were looking for houses down there. WCB is involved just in case it is in one of our facilities. He was also the planner, so he had gone and checked a few properties and we're not sure exactly which properties. So it's really been challenging and definitely difficult for our staff. It's been heart-wrenching for everyone. So meanwhile, we are extremely short-staffed. We do not have a public works manager at this time either. And our interim CAO, CFO is at capacity. So I'm hoping that, like I said previously, we have hired a company to find us a CAO. I think we have some good prospects, and we will hopefully see some changes coming and some relief for our senior staff in the coming months. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Hopful. And for those of you that don't know, of course, my little antenna went right up when I heard hantavirus. There's, I think, been 3 cases in BC in the last few years. It's inhaled from deer, mouse, feces, and urine. And I think of it as more of a caribou. I mean, originally, I believe it was called the Navajo disease. It was from that Four Corners area. And yes, something to be aware of for sure. My updates from Area B, I think I've got little items on the agenda. I was thinking the hub is going well. Kim is retiring, but she keeps saying that. And LAFS is going well. We're going to have the annual general meeting this evening. I'm hoping to go. I'm hoping the meeting will be over by dinner time. And we're trying to get the pool back open. Yeah, I think we'll move to Pemberton. I'm going to go geographically here. Director Richmond.
Just quickly on UBCM, Jen's not here, but she did a great job as outgoing president of UBCM. Handled it all very, very well, and deserves some kudos on that. And congratulations to our very own Jenna Stoner, who is now third VP for UBCM on the executives. So we are very well represented out there, you guys. We're in good hands. Pemberton, I'll just touch back on our OCP that Vivian brought up earlier. We, at our last meeting, declared that we're going to hit the pause button on our OCP process while we work through a refresh of our protocol agreement with Lillooet Nation. We, obviously as one of the main and very key stakeholders and referral groups on our OCP, felt that this was and in talking with them and recent conversations, I felt like this was the next natural step, and that before we go any further with the OCP, that we should revisit our protocol agreement. So we've officially hit the pause. It's been an interesting announcement to manage since there's folks in our community that are reacting with concern that this will mean we're going to have to slow down development and building, and we have a housing shortage, and we can't allow this to slow down the development of new houses. And on the other side, we have other folks saying, well, if we're going to pause the OCP, we should really try to pause all development as much as possible until this OCP review is completed. So folks, with feelings and concerns all over on this, we're trying to let people know that certainly all the information we've gathered from residents through the OCP process has not gotten lost, and it's actually still informing or is already informing some of our applications that are coming through. So that information is not lost, the work is not lost, and it'll all be picked up as soon as we can. And that what development does continue to go through will be managed with those goals in mind that have been not established yet, but have been brought up through our OCP process. So it's been an interesting conversation in our community. I anticipate it's going to go on for a little while here. In the meantime, I'm really looking forward to starting. We've set up a protocol committee, and I'm really looking forward to starting that work with Lillooet Nation. I think it's an exciting point in time for us. I think this will help set a new path forward, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Thanks.
Well done, Pemberton. Yeah, and congratulations, Jenna. I didn't know that. That's terrific news. Whistler, Director Crompton.
Thanks. Yeah, I want to join my voice with Mike on congratulations to Jenna. And Jenna, I think it is evidence of just the influence this small region has on the rest of the province, and I think that's exciting for us. Whistler, it's funny. Through COVID, you all know that it was a very sort of there's a massive interruption in all of our lives, and it certainly was in sort of tourism, like visitation to our community. And last summer was extremely busy as people were able to start moving around the province more, and this summer was a little bit more restrained in our community, which was kind of nice to be able to have things not as busy. But one of the neat things in our town in Rhythms is shoulder seasons, where we get to pause a little bit and see each other around town in different ways. And so there's a lot of public engagement happening amongst residents in our community that in the summer and in the winter we don't get as much opportunity to do because everyone is so busy hosting. So this is kind of an interesting time in our community, which is exciting for us. Manabu Aikita was the temporary exhibit at the Dane Art Museum for the last 4 months, and there's, I think, a week left of Manabu, and it is some of the most interesting art I've ever seen in my life. The exhibit is called Flowers from the Wreckage, and it's really got the attention of our community, and it's been a lot of fun having him in town. He was actually in town and had the upstairs floor of the museum as his gallery, so people could go and spend time with him as he did his art. And he leaves Whistler very shortly, which in some ways, yeah, we'll miss him for sure. It was great. And then I wanted to mention that tonight, the Whistler Institute is hosting the first fall speaker series event, which is a presentation by UBC professor in the School of Public Policy and Global Affairs on Canada, the Asian century, what comes next. And it's a discussion of trade with the Pacific Rim and how Canada interfaces with the rest of our trade partners in this area. And I think it'll be a really interesting conversation. At council, we're seeing a lot of movement on housing, and it's really exciting to see Checkmas Crossing starting to fill in. There's roofs on 2 apartment buildings and a new building site getting prepared as well. So great to see people moving into homes. Lots more to do, but want to celebrate those moments when we actually have movement as well. Thanks for the opportunity to share about Whistler.
Thank you. We'll proceed down the corridor to Squamish. Jenna and Armand? No.
Yeah, thank you.
And Chris is there too, sorry.
A few things here. There seemed to be so much going on. It's hard to narrow it down to the 3. But the municipality launched our accessibility plan, and with an event on September 10th that was called the Walk and Roll that our staff put together, and we had many nonprofits working in sort of accessibility space come and be in the community. And the event, the participants got a little passport and moved around the community and interacted with these groups. And it was really amazing to see all the different groups working in this area, right from the Canadian National Institute for the Blind and their guide dogs programs, right through to wheelchair basketball and just really a wide breadth. It was really great to see, and I'm really proud of work of our team and their committee, and really going above and beyond. It also highlights the plan and the event both highlight the tremendous amount of work we have to do in this area, but that's the point. That's why we come to do these roles. So lots to yet to do, but a big milestone for us and quite important. In mid-August, we're really excited that CapU has purchased the Quest facility here in Squamish. So we know the impact that Quest had in their time here on our community, and with their format, and having CapU come on board, and it is really exciting for us and the local education opportunities for our community, and it'd be really exciting to work with them going forward. So that's a big piece for us, and I think for the whole corridor. I also think, as we just heard from Director Crompton, the lots of work to do on affordable housing, and we do have a public hearing coming up shortly on October 3rd around an initiative to essentially permits affordable housing projects in all of our zones with certain parameters the aim is to take a barrier away from these projects being realized. So if the project is 100% affordable housing, it will fall into its own category, and not only already receive preferred treatment through our processes, but also eliminates a step in the process to further facilitate affordable housing across the community. So that'll be looking forward to having that discussion with our community on October 3rd. Accessibility plan public hearing CapU, and I'll touch on UBCM. I'll also extend my congratulations to Director Stoner for her work there. Well deserved. We also had 3 resolutions move through the resolution session. 2 really around workforce accommodation, 1 on the housing impact, and 1 on social impacts, including recommendations from the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's work. So, and another on understanding BC Hydro's grid capacity as we move forward with our planning to electrify. So all in all, a very eventful time, and happy to share. Thank you for giving the opportunity.
Thank you, and I'd like to invite Director Stoner and Pettingill to add to that. Jenna, are you shaking your head?
That's lots of time, but thanks for all the congratulations.
Chris?
We did funnel our suggestions to Armin before he started talking, so it was a group effort.
Okay, excellent group effort.
If Jenna and Chris don't want the time, I'd be happy to talk more about Whistler.
We're moving down. Okay, Director Rainbow, Area D.
Well, Jack, I'd just like you to know that Mo and I are coming to Whistler next week with 4 friends. We're staying for a couple of days. We're going to boost our economy. We'll probably spend as much as $100 while we're there. So I'm sure you'll be very pleased with that. Okay, to Area D. Bad news, the Upper Squamish Valley continues to be, how do I express this? There continue to be considerable problems there. We have one that surfaced today that their internet is down again, which doesn't sound like much, except that the only way to contact people at certain times, in times of an emergency, is through the internet. And when it's down, we could have a serious problem if there were flooding, or less likely to be a fire now. But and then the So I really appreciate the work the staff are doing with that, but I just want you to know it's continuing to be a problem. Just to comment on Britannia Beach, if you go through now, you'll notice that the Blue Bus restaurant, which has been there for the last 30 odd years, is being removed, which will enable McDonald's to continue to complete their retaining wall and so on and complete their paving. We're getting really close to those buildings being occupied, and I certainly by next spring we're going to have businesses open and running there. The childcare facility is well underway in terms of the interior of the building. The grocery store is being fitted out. The pub is they're getting close to the point of actually doing the whatever you call it, the installation inside there. So it's all very exciting. The problem, a little bit of problem with the relations with Moti right now. Staff and I have met with them a couple of times. That area that if you drive past, you'll see the retaining wall that McDonald's have built. Well, the land between there and the highway is Ministry of Transport. And we're having some discussions with them about how that's going to be used. The post office boxes are there right now, right on the highway, basically. And we want them moved, but the highways don't want to move them, or don't want to have them moved elsewhere. And so there's some things that might be coming to the board about that in the future, but we hope that we can get that resolved and get that area tidied up and make it look nice. So it sort of is a good introduction, a good edged boundary of the community. And just one last thing, we had in Furry Creek last week, we had one of our community building events. If you think back to the time of the public hearing at Furry Creek, there was very clear division within the community, and we worked hard at bringing people together. And we had an Oktoberfest with people with the whole lot, the lederhosen and everything, and had a really good time. And that was a very positive event. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you all. Item 9.2 is from Area B, and it's about contribution to the swimming pool here. I'd like to move that funding of $20,000 be granted to the District of Lillooet from the Electoral Area B PILT funds towards the costs and operations of the rec center swimming pool. Seconded by Jenna, thank you. And is anyone opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. 9.3 is a support letter that I wrote just for your information. Similarly, 9.4, letter of support. Any questions on that? If not, we'll look at item 10.1.
We need to move receipt.
Thank
Receipt
you.
for 9.3.
Could we please move receipt for 9.3? Anyone? Yes, I'll move receipt of 9.3. Need a seconder then. Jenna, thank you. Anyone opposed? Similarly with 9.4, I'll move receipt. Seconded by Sal Demare. Anyone opposed? Carried. 10.1. Correspondence for action, Lillooet Nation, United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act. Calls upon us to recognize and adopt the Act on the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. What would you like to do with this?
We could refer this to staff if the board is comfortable with that.
With having Jeanette look at this and come, yes, Director Herford?
Yeah, I was going to refer this to staff and bring back to assess and bring back this topic to a future board meeting.
So moved. Seconder, Director Demare. Anyone opposed? Yes, Jeanette does amazing work. Thank you. That's carried. Item 10.2, House Sound Community Forum. And Tony, how do I say it? Some House Sound Biosphere Region updates. Would anyone like
Sorry,
to?
I was just
Director Rachel?
10.2.
I've got some.
What do you want me to say?
She's looking for confirmation of the pronunciation of it, Katsum.
Oh,
Thank
a
you.
cat's, yeah, sorry.
All of
Thank
you
you.
can say it properly. All right.
I think we were looking to see if there were, to have a board appointee for this forum.
I don't think they need it for the forum. They want an appointee for the Biosphere
Okay.
Committee. don't
There's
they?
also an so do you individually RSVP to go to the forum in Whistler? Yes, okay, so everybody does that on their own? Yeah. Okay.
It was just for information.
Okay.
It was-
Discussion?
Sorry, through the chair, the letter was added for information in regards to the forum as it's coming up fairly soon on October 12th. And it's up to the individual board members if they're wanting to attend. The second piece of information and what we're looking for from the board is we're seeking a nomination of an elected official to be an appointee of the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District.
Okay, looking sort of to Squamish Area D, would you like to take?
Director Pettingill has his hand up.
Yeah, just for context, my recollection is that there are a number of other members there. They were looking for one appointee from the Sunshine Coast Regional District and one from the Howe Sound Regional District. So as you know, normally you participate as municipalities and so on, but with this, it's one appointment per region. And so I think the idea is that we figure out who from our region makes sense and could be staff or representative.
Dr. Herford has his hand.
Director Herford, go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. I think going to the regional district level for an appointee was an appropriate course of action. So to try to keep things as all the municipalities are members of their various regional districts, but given that Squamish is the largest population in this, I think the appointee should be from the SLRD, should be from Squamish. And
What is the
and I'm happy
rationale
to
for that?
that's the first discussion point, and if that's and then I'd be happy to be that appointee.
I'd be happy to be that appointee as well.
Well, you two will have to arm wrestle. We don't have a place for Squamish and for SLRD here.
Can I ask a question?
By all means, Director Crompton.
What does this mean? We're all there representing.
This is not the forum, Jack. This is the Biosphere Region Initiative Society, which sort of, if you like, they're the group that organizes the forum and conducts the forum, but they meet about various other issues as well. So it's not the forum, and I don't object to the idea of Almond being a representative, but I don't like the rationale that because Squamish is the biggest area, therefore the rep should come from Squamish.
I didn't hear that as the rationale. Not that my.
I'm sorry, Ahmed. I thought that's what I heard you say.
Well, I think I think it's a portion of the rationale, but I'm comfortable to hear other thoughts on this. We'd obviously be in any role that any of us are appointed to on behalf of the SLRD. Obviously, the regional context is of utmost importance, but I think the Squamish context is particularly important for this particular appointment, amongst everything else, of course.
Oh, sorry, Dr. Pengill.
Yeah, just a question. I mean, this could be a political or a staff appointment. Is resourcing wise and so on, is there the staff capacity? Or does this really at this time need to be a board appointee?
Good question. I'm not certain about staff capacity at this point.
Yeah, through the chair, if I could note, we did forward this off to staff for their feedback as well. And we would suggest that it be a board appointee as a representative of the SLRD, likely from a staff capacity perspective as well. Yeah.
I should know this, but I want to check. We haven't filled our position for the climate work with the SLRD, right? Okay. I saw it posted and then I just, okay. So we don't have anyone in that position. So at this point, Angela, are you saying this should be someone from the board of directors that we choose?
Yeah, yes, in speaking with staff and the planning and development, they've been sitting with a little bit of work around this file and have put together an MOU with the biosphere on some other work. But our hope is that there would be an appointee from the board for this.
All right, and we have 2 volunteers for that, if I understand, between Director Herford and Director Rainbow. Am I tracking all of this correctly on Zoom here? Okay, so this is a good thing. We have 2 instead of 1. Now, how to proceed with that? Would
Well,
you
I think how we proceed with it is that I'll declare that I'm not interested in doing it.
Are you withdrawing, Tony?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you be willing to be an alternate to Armand as backup?
It should be somebody else from Squamish. I'm fine. I do enough work with them anyway, so
And you'll still work with them?
I do, yes.
Okay. Do we need a resolution to appoint Director Herford to that position then, please, with the House Sound Biosphere? I'll ask for a resolution to that effect. Now, okay, I see Director Pettingill has his hand up and seconded by Sal Demare. Is anyone opposed to Director Herford taking that position? I don't see any opposition. Okay, then that motion is carried. And also, thank you very much, Director Rainbow, for putting your name. Yes, Jenna.
Can I just seek clarification from Director Rainbow if he would be able or willing to act as an alternate? I don't think it necessarily needs to be somebody from Squamish. And I do think it's important to have an alternate, and it's a regional district appointment. So if there's interest there, I would like to just ask.
If you'd like me to be the alternate, then that's fine. I can do that.
I'll move that Director Rainbow be alternate.
Thank you, Director Stoner, seconded by Director Herford. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. Thank you very much. 10.3 is a request for funding with the Lillooet Agriculture and Food Society. I'd like to move that we fund $1,500 from Area B payment in lieu of taxes, PILT funds to support the LAF's annual general meeting, event costs and dinner. I'll move that. Seconded by Director Demare. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. 10.4, Director Demare, Braylorn Recreation Area.
I'll have to declare a conflict of interest.
Okay.
As my daughter is an employee of the BRVCA and my wife is on the board of directors.
Thank you. And will staff remove Sal, or will you just turn off for a few minutes, Sal?
Put them in the waiting room.
Okay. Director Demare is in the waiting room.
Move that.
Director Rainbow is moving $5,000 from electoral area B PELT funds for.
It
Yes,
says electoral area A on here.
yes, that's more important. That's the most important point. Electoral area A. Oh, my God. Thank you. I'll second that. Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by myself. Is anyone in opposition? Seeing none, motion carried. 10.5, a request for comment on BC geographical names, Squamish name change request for Mount Garibaldi. Welcome back, Director Demare. We are on 10.5, the name change for Mount Garibaldi. Is Jack still with us?
Yes, I do have Director Rainbow who has his hand up as well.
Okay,
Yeah, I've always wondered why a mountain in BC was named after an Italian political figure. So I looked it up, and apparently there was an Italian sailor on a British survey ship who saw the mountain one morning, and that morning happened to be Garibaldi's birthday. So he decided he'd call this mountain Mount Garibaldi. Yeah, wonderful. So to change that name back to the original First Nations name, I think was an excellent idea. And I would, what do we need? We need to make comment. My comment, I would like to write a letter commenting that we fully support the idea of restoring the First Nations name to that mountain.
thank you. Seconder? See, many hands. Director Herford, seconded. Anybody opposed? And the pronunciation of that, does anyone know? It's K?
And Chikai.
Thank you. And Chikai. Okay. Now, we do have some late items here. 10.6, which Director Demare pulled from the consent agenda.
4.2.6.
The consent agenda item was 4.2.6, District of Barrier Letter to Premier 2023 Wildfire Response Request for Third-Party Review. Director Demare?
Yes, I heard at yesterday's meeting that at UBCM, the ministry is gonna have a session on the wildfire. But the key piece in this letter was that a local government representative for the area would be in the review. So I would like to send a letter also, same as Barrier did from the SLRD, because I think it's critical that the people involved in the wildfire, the local elected officials, need to be part of it. I want to be part of it. So I'd like to have make a motion that we also send a letter.
Thank you, and I see that seconded by Director Hopful. Any more comments on that? Director Crompton, yeah?
I guess my understanding of the process is that it's going to be, I mean, there will be public engagement elsewhere, but my understanding of this process is that it is a discussion, and maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but it is a discussion with sort of the people that are doing the work, I'm losing words now. Like, it's going to be very quick, and it's going to be talking to the professionals that are doing the work. And then I think there'll be a larger public engagement, but it seems to me that when we talked to them at EBCM, it didn't seem like they were likely to be appointing members of the public or members of local government.
Well, thank you.
Not sure that was all that helpful.
Well, that's good, because that letter speaks to I think where they need to go.
I just wonder if we don't suggest another process. It just seems like this process will be going down the path, and maybe what we're asking them for is a larger sort of public engagement process that does engage local government on exactly what worked and what didn't.
I think if you read the letter from Barrier, it's very specific to the wildfires that we had this year, and we had a number of wildfires of note that had structural damage, and I think those are the ones that letter speaks to.
I had Director Rainbow as well. If I can just, before you go, the one, final paragraph in this is that, that all regional districts and municipalities in BC, they have support for this initiative and ask the province to undertake this important review of the 2023 wildfire. It doesn't necessarily want involvement. Are you specifically saying, Director Demers, that you want to add a clause that we be involved? Or just something similar to what was put on here? Just sort of recreating the letter that Barrier had?
Yeah. I think we just recreate it.
Sorry, I just wanted some clarity. Director Demers had, or Director Rainbow had.
Yeah, reading the letter, it seems to me what Barrier's asking for is that as part of the process, there should be a review, including local officials and First Nations people from the affected areas.
Yeah.
So, I understand what Jack's saying, but I think I don't see a problem in supporting that letter that Barrier have sent.
Yeah.
The key. Sal's saying, it has been directly affected. He would be somebody who would be interested in it. Somebody like myself would have no involvement in something like that at all because we just weren't affected.
I did see Director Stoner. Were you seeing the same thing, Nikki?
I was just going to say, we did receive information at our ministry meeting with Minister Forrest about a program that was going to be initiated that would involve all those impacted by the wildfire and local governments. And I did follow up to say that we would like to be involved. So I haven't heard anything further on that.
Yeah. Yeah. In the third paragraph, that's the key for me, that this review should include a committee consisting of locally elected officials and First Nations from affected areas. To me, that's the key, is that locally elected officials. And if we need to highlight that in the letter, then I think we need to highlight it, boldface it, whichever, because I want to be involved in it for sure, if it happens.
I have a Dr. I think Pettingill and then Stoner. I'm not sure, Dr. Stoner, if you had your hand up a little while ago. I could be incorrect in the order.
I did. I don't actually know where my hand icon has disappeared from my Zoom platform. But go ahead, Director Pettingill, I'll speak after.
Okay. Yeah, I guess for me, I definitely think it makes sense for there to be local involvement. It's not clear. I guess I have some hesitation about this being a political committee. And, I have some bias towards, I think, staff work at the direction of local boards. And so I guess that's my hesitation. And it does sound like the province is moving ahead, like we heard from the minister and their staff, with a review and an engagement with local governments about, what are the learnings? And so it sounds like it's in process. And I am a bit hesitant. I need some more thought and consideration, discussion before saying local elected, or that this be a political review rather than the sort of the experts that were on the ground who again are working in our direction. So I just have some hesitation there.
Director Stoner?
Yes, I just wanted to put my 2 cents in that I don't think now is actually the right time to write a letter. Hearing what Ms. Gilmore has just said, that we have done some advocacy on this piece, we have heard from the province that they're moving on this. I think it's important to wait and see the structure that they come out with, knowing that they are hearing, they've heard from us. Ms. Gilmore has, or CAO Gilmore has followed up. It takes staff capacity and time to continue to write these letters. I think there's ongoing communication with our staff. And I don't think now is the right time to write a letter given the ongoing work, and that if what we do see come out in terms of the proposed structure of this review isn't sufficient, then we can continue to do advocacy. But I think we've done a lot at this point, and writing another letter I don't think is going to be helpful.
Sal, how are you feeling? Do you want to comment? And I think I saw Director.
Yeah, I will comment. I think without being upfront and saying that we want locally elected officials to be engaged, it isn't going to happen. So if we're not upfront about it, then I'm sorry, we're not doing our job. We were the ones that were affected. Our residents were affected up here, and also with the Casper Creek fire. And it's important that the elected officials for those areas are engaged in this process. And if we're not upfront to do it, then I'm sorry. To me, this.
I had Director Rainbow and then Director Hoffel.
Let's go back to where this comes from. This letter that we have in front of us is from the District of Barrier, and it's from the Mayor. And he's writing and he's asking for support from other regional districts. I would venture to suggest that if one of our municipalities had been half been destroyed by wildfire this summer, the elected officials from that municipality would be speaking about it up front and center and wanting to be involved. And that's what I'm hearing from Sal. Sal was there. Sal was evacuated for God knows how long. The devastation in that area, I can't imagine that. I'm not going to go up there and have a look because I think that doesn't contribute to the solution. But I think that an elected representative from that area should be involved. And this is not saying it's a political, it's just involving elected officials along with the wildfire experts and the BC Wildfire Service and everything else. So I support. Did we move that we're going to support that letter? Have we got a motion on the floor?
Yeah.
There is a motion.
Yes, but there's no vote.
No, okay. Thank you.
It was Director Hoffel and then Dr. Herford.
Thank you. I just think that it's really important to have a strong voice from the people that are impacted. And basically, this letter says that the review should include a committee consisting of local elected officials and First Nations from affected areas. And Sal is he's our spokesperson because he's in the affected area. I don't think it is doing anything but supporting and saying our voice of what we think should happen, because all too often people are making decisions when they have no idea what it's like for those people in the affected area. So I support Sal on this.
Director Gifford?
Yeah, thank you. When we write letters, this is advocacy work. So I think that we need to be mindful of the advocacy work and the steps forward that we've already heard our staff have made. So I think that writing a letter that doesn't reference the meetings that have already happened and the commitments that we've heard from the province and what their next steps are would be a little disjointed in our advocacy process. So when I think about being strategic in our advocacy, I'm supportive of the goal. So I don't know, just replicating the letter and adding our voice to it, I think misses the work that's happened in the last 30 days since this original letter was drafted. And without referencing that work, I don't know that really advances the advocacy in the way that I'm hearing everyone is quite motivated to, and I'm supportive of that. So, a motion that says replicate the letter, I don't think is the best advocacy here. I think we need to add a little bit that updates the context because things are moving quickly on this file, and there has been movement in the last 30 days. So I just wanted to think about that, and I'm supportive of the end goal, but how do we best do that? And I don't think it's simply replicating this letter. I think adding some context there is important. And we have heard another perspective would be to bring something to our next meeting and see where we are at that point, because things are moving quickly. So either adding something now or seeing where we are in another 30 days and which piece of this needs a push, because maybe we can be more selective to the actual piece that needs a push at that point. So I don't think that just replicating is the best way forward at this point to achieve the goal, which I'm supportive of.
Director Pettingill has his hand up.
Yeah, so there was 2 meetings I was part of, one with the Minister and the staff, where they did speak about the work upcoming. I'm wondering, do we think that by next meeting we would have details from them of what exactly they are planning, or the sense you got?
I did not. I haven't heard back any further details on that. I just reached out. There is some work that is being done that Director Bruce Jones did comment on, that Mark Simpson is leading some discussions with Area A and Area B. There are other individuals in that group as well to sort of have conversations about that. There may be more information that's going to be taking place on November 8th. But as far as the working group that the province is putting together, I believe they were just getting that going. The staff, the BC wildfire staff member we met with during our meeting, he indicated that he wasn't aware of that program as of yet. So I think they're still working to unroll it and unpackage it. So I do have an additional level of follow-up to do to see where that particular working group is at.
I see Sal's hand up and Director Rainbow.
I wonder if I make a motion where the CAO would communicate back to BC Wildfire or the province that for this review, that the local elected official of the areas affected should be on the review panel. Instead of this other motion.
Okay,
letter.
so withdrawing the idea of replicating that letter, but rather just asking for an action from staff. Am I getting that right, Director Demare?
Yes.
Okay. How does that sit with staff and the board and Director Crumpton? I think I saw Director Rainbow too. Maybe we should go back to Nikki being in charge of this.
Director Rainbow and then Director Crumpton. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Arva made a good point. Sorry, Director Herbert made a good point in there that things have moved along since this letter. and that we should reflect on that. I'm in favor of writing a letter now rather than waiting to see what happens in a month's time and then reacting to that letter. I'd rather send a letter now. I like what Sal just had to say, that we craft our own letter, that we can still reference the merit barrier, but we could just emphasize that we want our elected official involved in this. And a relatively short, brief letter, and just send that off and reference the meetings we've had with them, so that they know that we're not, that we are aware of what's been going on. So I don't know where Sal got with that motion. I don't know where we are procedurally. Somebody from a municipality can tell me how we deal with it.
Well, I have a comment just about sort of what we could do moving forward, because I agree. I think we actually have direct contact information, and we're sort of staff are liaising with those contacts through email, which I think is quite quick in order to respond back and forth and get that information and advocate that. I would say not only the elected officials in those impacted areas, but also I've tried to I've shared that information with relevant staff in the organization who should be part of that, who are also on the ground helping assist through that process. So I'm happy to continue to follow up that way. I think Director Demare, what your suggestion was that, the CAO follow up. I think that allows a little bit of flexibility on how that follow up happens. And as I mentioned, I think it could probably get there a little faster than if an official letter was drafted. Director Crompton, do you just have a comment on?
Sorry, is the proposal from Director Demare to request that the province put our one of our directors on their task force? I'm confused. Like the review task force that's going to be, I think it may have already been struck. That's not what we're talking about. I'm confused. Or are we talking about an appointment to the expert task force that the Premier announced at the beginning of September?
Yes, exactly. As that letter states, that the merit barrier put out there, that's what they'd like to see. The elected officials that were affected by the wildfires should be on that review panel.
Okay. I don't support this because I think it's already done. I think we're going to be making advocacy that is going to not result in the outcomes that we want. I think what we want is to be able to have the voice of this community as part of a public process that would be effective. I would hope that we would be asking for something different than an adjustment of the mandate of the expert panel that the province announced at the beginning of September. I just don't think they're going down that path. And I think this is going to be done before we finish our advocacy on it. So I think what we want to ask for is a real substantive participation in the review of what happened, rather than inserting ourselves into something that I think the answer will just be no. We need something else, something substantive and effective as far as hearing the voice of the community.
Yeah. Chair. One of the big things that the review is going to do, which we saw vividly in our area, was the participation of volunteer firefighters. And you saw that in the shoe shop area when that Adams Lake fire happened, where the people in the community were doing wildfire stuff. And in the end, there was a big to-do about it. And in the end, BC Wildfire trained them and brought them on. In our area, we've had, as you know, I started the training program back in 2013 when I was a president of the Gun Lake Fire. And then I started it with the BRVCA. And we've trained hundreds of people in wildfire firefighting. And in our area, we had the Braylorn Fire and the Gun Lake Fire hired on by BC Wildfire. And we had some complications prior to that. So I have a lot of insight into what happened. And part of that review process is going to be talking about that. That's why I want to be part of the conversation.
Dr. Crompton?
I think that makes a lot of sense, Director Demare. I wonder if the letter requests that they, the expert task force consults with us and considers the input that we would have. I think that may be a more realistic request, and one where we can actually make all the points that you want to contribute and that need to be contributed. I just don't think we're going to, by a way of letter, modify the structure of a provincial task force.
One of my mottos is always, you don't know until you ask.
Okay. I saw Director Stoner, and I see Nikki's also wanting to say something, as well as Director Herford. Do I
I'll
have that
pass
right?
my talking stick to CAO, who can hopefully help illuminate where we go.
I just wanted to, we were granted obviously a minister meeting at UBCM plus a ministry staff meeting. And the original intention of their discussion points at that meeting was how CN and potential impacts to wildfire. And while we were there, we sort of took the opportunity, just sort of at the very end of the minister meeting, but more so we focused with staff conversation about that very same conversation, because we were just coming off of wildfires and what we'd seen not only in your area, Director Demare, but also where other fires were happening in BC, and wanting to know sort of what programs or initiatives or how BC Wildfire could engage with those who are remaining in the area, who are able to assist in not only wildfire building berms, hands on the ground, but a variety of other people who just want to help out. And I also thought that there could be there's a role for local government to sort of help liaise and make that happen. And so we really focus on that conversation. And from those follow-up emails, that's where we got the information from about the November 8th discussion with Mark Simpson. And I think that's something that I would definitely continue to advocate for in looking to better support BC Wildfire and all of those who want to make a difference in their communities. So I just wanted to let you know that there was a bit of a shift in those conversations that we had at UBCM, because we wanted to take that opportunity to bring those important topics to the forefront. And I think there was some understanding and that they were going to expand that. Would you agree with that, Director Penkin? And not just, again, looking at those people in the office. How do we get people to come and help with everyone has a different skill set that they can bring to those events. So there was definitely an understanding. So some of that work is underway. I just wanted to take a moment to share that information with the board at this point.
Thank you. And Director Herford?
Well, thank you. I just wanted to be reminded of the exact motion. I appreciate the conversation, but we're getting down to like needing to vote on something, and I just lost the exact wording of the latest piece. So if I could have that back, please.
I believe, Director Demare, correct me if I'm wrong, but you wanted the CAO to follow up with BC Wildfire and indicate or express the interest that the area directors in those impacted areas with wildfire be involved in the meetings moving forward.
Correct.
Okay, we'll massage that so it sounds a little better.
Yeah. And I presume I'm gonna have to rescind my motion,
It's.
my original motion.
It's defeated in the sense that if it doesn't go ahead. I don't think we need to do, yeah, it hasn't actually been voted on, so it's not a formal
Okay,
resolution.
so I'll make the motion of what you just described.
And I'll second that, Chair.
And just in the interim, I did see Director Hopful. Laura, you had your hand up in there? Or,
Just to second it is all.
okie dokie. So,
Director Pettingill has his hand up at this point.
okay,
Yeah, I guess just my hesitation, yeah, and I was part of those meetings, so maybe I have more comfort that the ministry is sort of looking to engage with the appropriate people and is making progress on that, so but I also, I haven't fully wrapped my head around and haven't heard a detailed report from our staff on, what happened, what worked and didn't work from even our side. And before saying an area director should be taking that regional, our region's message, do we have additional perspective? Do we also need staff people? Like, do we only want an area director there, or do we need other staff or other directors, or how do we best address in this process the concerns we have? And there may be multiple things. Like, I don't feel like we've had that discussion as a regional board, and so I want to understand, what are the issues we want to address, and which person or persons are the best to take that message forward. And so I would sort of appreciate if we had that discussion ourselves before we push the province further on who else needs to participate in this.
we see Director Crompton.
That is a really interesting point. I mean, what we are saying is that Director Demare is going to represent the SLRD to the provincial process without us having heard from our staff about what worked and what didn't. I find that a little bit concerning, because I think that hearing from our team about what actually happened, because I don't know, would make some sense. I wouldn't feel comfortable representing the RMOW to the provincial government without having had a report or a conversation with our staff and council, myself.
I think I just want to say that up here in the so-called north, we're very familiar with being left out of these processes. And then, where the lip service goes that all those affected areas will be consulted. Of course, we'll do all the right things, and then decisions come down, and you've missed the critical conversations. I think Sal's just trying to say, make sure he's included in there along the way, and Area A certainly should be there. And I also see Director Stoner's hand.
Thank you. See the chair. Yeah, I think while I appreciate that there still needs to be a debrief at this board, the reality is that this is still very fresh. Like, the last evacuation alerts were just rescinded this week. And so that will take some time on our end. So I think that this can be a parallel effort. From what I hear as a motion on the floor is just for the CAO to follow up on ongoing discussions to make sure that there's local representation in the discussions going forward. And that I feel comfortable with. And I think we can do that in parallel with our staff coming back to the board in due course to have a bit of a debrief as well. So I feel comfortable with the motion on the floor. And I think that can give us all some time to do ongoing follow-up conversations that have happened from UBCM, give our staff the time and the direction to keep advocating in that direction, as well as do our work internally.
Thank you, Director Stoner. We'll need to vote on this. I see Director Pettingill again.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's a way to get a copy of the resolution, because what I am inclined to do, given the discussion, is to make an amendment to sort of say effectively, please, as you move forward, make sure you are including local governments and also including amongst that some of the including locally impacted directors, but not be exclusive to that, because I think we may also have additional perspective that we want represented there. I don't want to sort of cut off avenues, and I don't want to sort of presume that's the only representation you want or need. So something that's sort of highlights the need for that perspective to be included, but doesn't make it exclusive or say that's all we need there. I want to make sure that we are leaving the doors open for, so that it doesn't have to be just the area director, that we can come with the full force of our whole region behind this message if that's what's appropriate.
Director Hopful?
Yeah, I think everybody's, really got very good, valid points. I know somebody said something about, is it our job to modify the provincial government's task force? Well, no, but I do think it is our job to highlight to the provincial government's task force to include people from affected areas. So, I think we're all on the same page. We want to make sure that we have local representation. I think that we want to make sure that Sal, being in an affected area, is heard and does have that voice. Our path to get there, how do we go about that? But I do think it's our job to make sure that the provincial government's task force is modified to make sure that they include the people on the ground. So often it's not. And so again, can we just, before we vote, can I just have a clear reading on what the actual motion is? Please.
As you do that too, can I also ask, actually, yeah, that would be great. That'd be helpful to hear it.
Okay, so what we have at this point is that the CAO, excuse me, follow up with BC Wildfire and continue the advocacy efforts already initiated and emphasize the desire to have representation of the local governments impacted by wildfires.
So on that note, let's call the question on that and move along. Would that be all right?
Crompton, he had his hand up and
He did.
I wanted to say more words, but we're good.
Okay, we had that, we'll consider that moved by Director Demare, correct? I think you agreed with that. And seconded, I think I saw Director Herford. And now I'm looking for anyone in opposition. Seeing none. Motion carried. Okay. Good. Thank you. The other two items that we've brought forward were mine. The two letters from Fortis BC from the consent agenda. And I just could not leave those letters sitting in the oh, yes, sorry.
Through the chair, would you like to speak to them individually? We've got 10.7 as Fortis BC construction letter, which is their notice of construction. Notification level letter for Eagle Mountain, and 10.8 BC Energy Regulator letter in regards to the Fortis BC application.
I'm quite happy to speak to them together, just because to say that, this is my second term on the board, and the liquefied natural gas plant has sort of been in the works since I came onto the board. And I'm just not comfortable seeing this correspondence sitting in the agenda when I have such an objection to the expansion of oil and gas projects in the world, let alone British Columbia, let alone Squamish-Lillooet Regional District. So I know I just couldn't have that go by in the, I feel that when it just slips by in the consent agenda, it to me feels like tacit consent. And I don't consent. I don't know what levers the SLRD has, particularly around this project. I know this is more to do with Squamish and the Squamish Nation, Area D, but frequently over the summer during the wildfires, Minister Ma was referring to the fact that we're in a climate crisis, and we're seeing this in particular with, you know, the drought situation. I mean, my God, some agriculture has been cut off from their water supply because there's not enough water in the creeks for the fish to spawn. And I mean, we're still in a massive drought, and the wildfires were the worst ever, and so on. I don't need to convince you guys of all of this, but I mean, we also all know that the science is very clear that expanding oil and gas and increasing infrastructure around those industries at this point in time is exactly the wrong way to go. So I just felt I needed to pull those letters because I couldn't just see them go by in the consent agenda. And I'm not sure that it's worth writing to the province to say that, or, I mean, I'd be really happy for some comments from other board members about sort of where are we going with that, in particular Squamish, because I think you're sort of sitting there looking at this project, and I'll stop there for a moment to hear from others. And I see Director Stoner.
Yeah, thanks for raising this issue. It's definitely something that is becoming more real, especially with the one letter that you pulled, Director Birch Jones, on the Fortis BC notice of start of construction. Both the pieces of correspondence that we have here are fairly diverse in the points of the projects that they impact. And so I don't think that it necessarily a response to either of these organizations is going to get us very far. There are still 2 temporary use permits that Fortis has applied for within the District of Squamish, one for a temporary works yard and one for a workforce accommodation site, which should be referred to the SLRD if they haven't been already. And that, I think, will be an interesting point of time where we could actually provide some weigh in, and there will be some regional impacts, especially on the workforce housing piece. So if those haven't been referred yet, they will be coming to SLRD staff. I see Angela is shaking her head, so I'll make sure that that has happened. But especially the workforce accommodation, the impacts on the highway, given the work schedule that they presented of a 6-day on, 1 day off, that 1 day off being Sunday, and 700 additional vehicles that are likely going to go up and down the Sea to Sky corridor on Saturday afternoons and Sundays, I think is something that is of regional interest and impact, let alone the real emissions issues within the project. But that's a bit of a highlight, and I think that that's probably our way forward here for the board in terms of direct impact for regional district.
Thank you. That was kind of exactly what I was looking for, was just to sort of see where we might have a lever, at least as a regional district. And I'm fine just to wait for that. And I also saw Ms. Belsham shaking her head that we haven't received that, but we likely will in due course. And we can discuss it as a regional board at that point. If yes, I see Nikki, have we got a speaker there?
Dr. Pettigrew.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that, Director Birch Jones, and a couple comments I'll add. You know, it is maybe something for the District of Squamish to consider in the timing of our TUP process, and when we get the information, when we share it, when we make a decision, to sort of coordinate that so the SLRD board maybe has a chance to provide feedback and so on into that, because I think there is significant possible housing impacts and all the things that go along with work camps, if that's the way people decide to go. are relevant, I think, to the regional district. And it's really confusing, but there are federal and provincial effluent permits, and we've talked about a couple of them here briefly. I think there was wood fiber got federal approval to reduce a lot of the original constraints around the project to protect the environment. And so they don't have to do as much to protect cetaceans, never sure I'm using that word properly, but seals and sea lions and so on. And I think there is some scientific review now that's become available that really suggests some of those decisions are problematic. And I'm expecting we may see similar stuff in terms of some of the provincial and or Fortis permits. So I think it's something for us all to stay vigilant of as that information comes forward, and we may have more opportunities to weigh in on some of these things. We may even want to provide comment to the agencies as to some of the recent decisions as we're aware of them. And I think a lot more information action is coming, so probably lots of opportunity going forward.
Thank you. Were there other comments? And yeah, Director Herford.
Sorry, my colleagues have done a really good job of framing where we are, and we'll ensure that those the municipality will ensure that we get those TP referrals to you to this board when it's time. There's still a lot of moving pieces, and we are struggling with the capacity to engage with them all fulsomely. And I think this exercise of just attempting to summarize where we are, where those opportunities to engage with the projects are further illustrate that. So thank you very much for pulling this, and we'll make sure that we get the that we highlight the opportunities to engage with the board as we see them at the District of Squamish. We'll find the ways to make sure that this group gets its voice heard.
Thank you. I'm comfortable to just leave it there if that's all right. We don't need anything further.
We need motions to receive each of them separately, please.
Motion to receive.
Move receipt of the Fortis BC letter.
Thank you. Seconded by me. Anyone opposed? All in favor? Or yep, good, motion carried. And the other letter? Same. Director Stoner and Director Crompton. Anyone opposed? Motion carried. So we'll move on from that merry topic to asbestos, I do believe. And I did have the letter here. CAO Gilmore, or also, okay, staff would like to speak to this. Thank you so much.
Actually, we have the decision on late business. I need a motion to, I guess, include or add the Pemberton Valley Diking District notification and permit process report.
I'll make that motion.
I also have Director Pettingill, so the team.
Sorry, I keep turning my mic off when it should be on. So that was moved and seconded and no one's in opposition. So we've added that as a late item. Good.
I'll add that to 12.4. So next, yeah. Following the other items in 12, so we'll be at the asbestos testing at this point, 12.1.
So now we're going to talk about the asbestos. And I do believe you have a bit of a report on that, staff.
Director Demare, do you want to start this, or would you like me to provide some information to the board on it?
You can provide the information.
Okay. Thank you. So the director's report I'll be discussing is on behalf of Director Demare. Through the process of moving into recovery phase for wildfire in the Gun Lake area, staff have identified that there needs to be hazardous waste testing prior to removal of the debris on each property in those in that area. As you recall, there were 51 properties with a complete destruction of property, and there's a lot of work to be done up there. So in an effort to try and help the property owners in that area, there was a suggestion of doing a group sort of hazardous waste testing with the focus on asbestos testing, just to confirm that there either is the presence of asbestos or there is not. Now, this would determine where that debris would be stored at either the Goldbridge transfer station or the Lillooet landfill. There are areas established for both of those. And the rationale for asbestos, or the reason for asbestos testing, is really for the protection of staff who are receiving the material and proper placement of that at either location when it's being removed. At this point, this would be a staff-led initiative. We would hire a consultant who would come to the area and do testing, grab samples on each of the properties. They would send this information away to a lab that is specialized and certified in asbestos testing. And they would provide the report to SLRD staff, who would then provide that information to the property owner. A high level estimate of those costs are between $30,000 and $50,000. It depends on, realistically, there will be some thresholds or some conditions. If the house was built, I believe it's after 1993, and that can be proved out by way of building permit, there isn't a requirement to do testing. So there'll be a little bit of work that we may do in the background, but there was just an estimate of that range of costs. So Director Demare has agreed to fund that testing with the approval of the board through a couple of different funds. The first one is through PILT funding, and that's what you'll see here on the agenda, and that's to a maximum of $35,000. If those funds are not fully utilized, obviously we wouldn't draw on them. They remain in the reserve. There'll be another report coming to the EAD meeting, October 8th, I believe is the meeting, and that would be for remaining funds of $15,000 from select funds, area select funds, to complete that work. Again, with the provision that any funds not used obviously wouldn't be drawn on the account.
Director Demare?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we did have properties on Gun Creek Road that were also affected. So I want to make sure that they're part of this.
Yeah. Yeah, and for clarity, this would just be for those residents in the Gun Lake area. I wasn't, not to be specific on whether it's on a specific road, but that are impacted by the fire. We want to make sure everybody's included in that.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And furthermore, I do believe there are some individuals who have already begun the testing. And so we wanted to, there's also another recommendation in there that those people be reimbursed on their funds to do those works as well. I believe Director Rainbow and then Director Pettingill.
Yeah, first, I don't think we have any choice about this. It's something we absolutely have to do. Two questions. One, is there any chance of recovering money from the province to pay for this kind of testing? And if that's not possible, then I'm not comfortable with Area A having to bear the full burden of it. And I'm just wondering if we can look at a way of spreading that cost across the regional district, so that we all contribute towards that testing.
In response to your questions, one, through the EOC, there was a submission for expense authorization for the asbestos testing, and that was denied. So that was the first avenue that we did try to get funds from. As far as spreading it across the regional district, as far as I know, there is not a cost center that is established to perform these types of works. So I haven't explored further whether any other funding could be available for this. So this testing needs to be done, obviously, as soon as possible, because individuals are getting back into their properties and their focus is on trying to clean up so that they can prepare the sites for, well, because there's going to be rain happening, preservation of Gun Lake, which is a drinking water source, and also for environmental impacts, and also in preparation for rebuilding, come hopefully in the spring for a number of them. So this is why it came as a late item as well. But as far as additional funding sources, there's nothing that by way of cost center that is established.
I would make a motion right now for those two that's that we approve those. Can I do the two together? Yes, I think so.
No, we had a couple other questions.
Oh, okay, I'm
before
sorry.
Director Pettingill?
Yeah, I can maybe ask mine after this is.
Okay.
I sort of move them in recognition of the fact that we have to get going. It has to be done. So let's not argue about the money right now. Let's get it done. And then we can talk about the money later.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, I'm moved and seconded. Is anyone opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. Thank you.
I'd like to make a
Director Demare, yep.
Yeah, I'd like to
And-
make a comment. I want to thank staff for working with me on this. This is very important, and like Nikki said, it has to get done right away. The rains have started to come, and we don't want snow on the ground before the stuff gets moved.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And Director Pettingill and Director Herford?
Yeah, it just, the hearing, and I was gonna ask the same question, but is there any chance of the province funding this? Because it seems like we're in a situation where unfortunately, this is not going to be an unusual thing. We're gonna see this more and more often. We seem to have an intent or we've got a lot of existing infrastructure and homes and so on that aren't prepared for the climate that is coming increasingly to us. And there seems to be some sense that we will rebuild in much of the same areas and we're changing some things, but I guess it's not clear to me that we are actually prepared for the cost and to respond as quickly as we need to respond. I don't think it's in our strategic plan right now to sort of address this, but it really strikes me if we are the ones that are going to have to fund this on an urgent basis and an ongoing basis, how the heck do we do that? And so I don't know when we have that conversation, but this seems to be something that we need to talk about maybe sooner rather than later, because, if we spend the money this time, do we have it next year when we need it? So it's not an argument against the immediate need, which is why I supported the motion, but I think we have to have this conversation.
I'm going to provide just a bit of information in response. Unfortunately, this was an expense that was supposed to be borne by the property owner. Unfortunately, there were no funds available for property owners to undertake any of the works to remediate their property as it was deemed uninsurable loss. Unfortunately, not all of the individuals in that area had insurance coverage. And I think that we've heard pretty loudly from a lot of the individuals because it was a large impact for such a small area. A lot of homes were destroyed there. And how can we expedite this? How can the regional district help us in moving this ahead? And I don't see this as being necessarily the norm potentially moving forward. And maybe this is setting a precedent, I'm not sure. But I know that there were funds that Director Demare had available and for that reason, he had wanted to, put some forward. But I think, an advocacy point for the province to, for this to be shouldered entirely on the property owners, might be something that could be considered. I think it is a huge burden. We run the risk of having those properties stay like that. and nobody doing anything to them, which could be and have a huge environmental impact on water, on the land, etc. So those are just some.
Yeah, just if I can, and that's sort of, you know, I guess I understand that, and it's just the next time this happens, I'm not sure the next group of property owners will be any better suited to handle it. So are we expecting that, you know, if we're gonna take it on, let's make sure we have the funding going forward and have a way to manage that, or if we just don't think we can do that, let's make it clear and set that expectation. And I don't know what the answer is, but I would like to have that discussion at some point too.
Perhaps I'll add that to an item included in the debrief to sort of dig deep a little bit dig deeper on that for future events, which I think we'd like to see, you know, what we can learn from this in moving forward, and the board is comfortable with that. I had, I think it's Director, sorry, it was Demare, Stoner, and then Rainbow. Do I have that in the right order? I apologize if I don't know Hereford's there. I think he was Director Hereford. I think you were first, actually.
Thank you. I just wanted to circle back on the point. Supported the motion on the point around distributing the financial impact of this more broadly, and just what I don't understand. I'm still trying to understand the budgeting process, as I know many of us are. I'm just curious, and if it's not applicable to this, just how going forward we can consider whether we should be sharing those costs like this. And I think this goes into Councillor Pettingill's points around just how do we do this going forward, and how do we come together as the communities we represent to support each other better. I'm not really ready to make a motion there. I'm just curious what the barriers, are, and I suppose what the forum would be to have that broader discussion, whether that's appropriate at all. At this point, I feel like it is, but I'm open to really working through these pieces. So I don't know where that discussion lives, but it feels adjacent to Councillor Pettingill's.
I will make a note of that to have conversation and bring back. I know there are some funds that or some cost centers that may be applicable, but I don't feel comfortable discussing those at this point. I'd like to connect with staff. But having those conversations sort of evolve out of the debrief while making specific points to discuss, that's what I can bring forward. Spiking, we had Director Demare, Director Stoner, Director Rainbow.
Yes, you'll see at the next EAD meeting, there's going to be another funding request for this wildfire, and it's drinking water quality testing from Gun Lake. The Gun Lake ratepayers is going to be the one asking me for the funds, and we're checking water quality on 3 main streams that come into the watershed and higher up because of all the burnt debris above it. And like I mentioned, a little bit of all the lava ash that we have in our area, and then 6 main areas on Gun Lake. So that water quality testing has already taken place, and so I'll be funding that project. It's anywhere from $10,000 to $12,000 just to do those 9 tests and get a report. We need the report. It's critical. And because pretty well everybody on the lake drinks that water. And we've also got the preservation and the conservation fund. So we're actually having a meeting tonight on that fund. And it's also dealing with the wildfire. And we're going to work through what that fund can be used for at the next stage as a group. So, the community has come together really well with trying to help everybody, all each other out. And this funding here that was just approved is critical for the residents to move forward that were affected. So thank you for approving it.
Director Stoner?
I'm fine. Let's keep going.
Director Rainbow?
Yeah, I think there's a long-term consideration here and an immediate consideration. Sort of in the long term, I agree. We should perhaps, we anticipate that there will be more problems like this coming up in the next few years. And what are we going to do about that? What can we do now? Can we create some sort of an emergency fund that we can plug into to assist us? So that would be one area to consider. Another would be, I'm sort of kind of disturbed that Sal has to take financial responsibility, or we, the regional district, has to take financial responsibility to test the water in creeks that are essential drinking water. And I wonder where the health authority is in that. Maybe they should be paying for that kind of testing. So that's something else we can do in the long term. So advocacy with the province and so on. In terms of the immediate situation, we've kind of dealt with it. It's going to go ahead. But I'll just mention to my colleagues right now, I'll be bringing something to EAD to help from Area D to support Area A. And we can do that within the regional district. We can transfer money from one place to another.
I think that was the end of my speaker's list.
All right. Are we moving on to the last couple of items here before I faint from hunger? I'll have to call a break if we don't pick up the pace here. All right. Correspondence for information, Office of the Ombudsman Quarterly Report, April 1 to June 30th, 2023.
I'll move receipt.
Motion to receive from Director Stoner, seconded by Director Herford. Any opposed? Seeing none. Motion carried. Correspondence for information, Minister of Children and Family Development, October 33rd, Foster Family Month in British Columbia.
Move receipt.
Motion to receive Director Stoner, seconded by Director Herford. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. And now the Pemberton Valley Diking District. Staff, would you like to proceed with that one, please?
Thanks, Chair. Kristen Clark, Director of Strategic Services. This would have been sent out to the board last night, and it stems from some requests the SLRD has received from the Pemberton Valley Diking District to submit permit applications for specific kinds of work. And there's a new request. This is a new request by the PVDD based on a different way requirements are being imposed on the Diking District, is my understanding. And because of the importance of the PVDD work, staff's recommending this authority to the CAO be put in place for the 2023-2024 flood season, and that staff bring back a report to deal with future flood seasons to look at this issue in a little more depth.
Okay, that's fine. I don't see Director Richmond here anymore at this point.
If I could add a comment.
Yes, please.
PDPD does prepare an annual, if not future capital works and maintenance that they need to do on the dikes, the ditches, the streams, etc. within all of Area C, I would say, mainly sort of in the meadows within the village of Pemberton and out towards Mount Currie. And that is a different program than what we're looking for here. That takes some notification, and it can take up to 2 years to get those types of approvals in place. The works that what they're looking for approval here, and that will require approval both from the SLRD and the village for those streams, et cetera, within Village of Palmerton boundaries are more emergency works. And that's where it requires the jurisdiction that those streams, ditches, et cetera, are in. Requires the local government to sign off on that. It is still the PBDD who will be undertaking all of those works, and they actually contract their qualified professionals to oversee and make those submissions for approval. So this typically wasn't enforced in the past, and it's something tweaked within the last year or so, and now this requirement is needed in order to get those emergency works approvals.
That makes sense. Would someone like to make the motion? Director Stoner, seconded by Director Herford. Is anyone opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. That ends our open agenda. We do need to go back into closed, I believe. Could we stay on the same link? Just disable the streaming? Excellent. Do we need to take a break here, or could we move through the last part of this meeting fairly quickly?
Let's get her done.
Okay.
We just need a few moments here.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's shut that open.